All right, so I've got 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First, we'll do some ground rules. Please silence all your cell phones. This meeting is being recorded. And any background noise. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. That would be the microphone icon on the bottom center left of the screen. Will be a time for questions and comments for each project after the Planning Commission reviews. If you want to make a comment, have a question at that point, please use the hand icon in the center bottom, and I'll call you to make your comments. You're going to need to state your name and address for the record, and your comment time will be limited to 2.5 minutes. And there will also be a time for public comment at the end of the meeting. So that is it for the basic ground rules. Let me get a roll call, starting with the Planning Commission members. Alex Ulmer. Okay, we'll circle back to Alex. Tim Ruth.
Present.
Andy Yench. Oh.
Present.
John Swartuck.
Present.
And our alternate Tony Bogner.
Present.
All right. Who do we have representing the Klein project?
I am Tyler Freed. I'm here from East Engineering representing the Klein project.
Okay. Are you the only one with the project here tonight?
Mrs. Klein is also on the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how about Triple Net?
Good evening. I'm Ed Murphy. I'm representing Triple Net, and we have multiple additional representatives and consultants participating, and we can either go through the roll call now, Chris, or we can wait until our time is ready, but up to you.
Yeah, why don't you do it now since we're identifying everyone?
Okay, I'll turn it over. I see Justin. I'll let Justin Gennady, who is the project engineer, I'll let him introduce the people from his office, and then we have a couple from Triple Net that will introduce themselves also.
Good evening. Thanks, Ed. So as Ed mentioned, Justin Gennady with Dynamic Engineering. From Dynamic, we also have Corey Chase from Dynamic Traffic, who is on the call as well. And I believe Dominic and Greg, if you want to introduce yourselves next.
I know they're on the call. It's Greg Rogerson, who is one of the principals of Triple Net, is participating, as is Dominic Baker, who is a senior staff member with Greg in Triple Net. So I think those are the participants for the Triple Net application.
Okay.
They did mention they have trouble with their microphone, so they'll get that working.
I did see those names on the joined list. So. All right, thank you. And then how about Select Properties?
So Brian Grant with Select Properties is on the call, as well as our engineer, Brian Fote from C2C Design.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to identify themselves?
David Collingwood, Board of Supervisors.
Evening, David. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's keep moving here. First thing on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes from our November meeting. Any questions, corrections? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
I'll make said motion. This is Tim.
This is Andy. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda would be the Klein lot line adjustment. Tyler, you want to take control here? Let us know what you're doing and what you want to do.
Yeah, so Mrs. Klein owns 4 tax parcels along. This is Bethlehem Pike, and then Green Top Road would be down here. And this here is Smoky Lane, which is a private drive or private road. So she owns 4 lots. There's 2 on the southerly end, and then a narrow lot above that, and then the larger lot farthest to the north. And what she's looking to do at this time is create 2 lots out of the existing 4. Basically, the issue came up because we did a survey, and as you guys can see, the one lot line goes through the existing barn, So she's looking to move that line to the south to, meet your guys' ordinance with the setbacks and to alleviate that existing problem. So Steve had done a review, and if you guys would like, we can go through each of the items, but mostly everything's a will comply. So unless you guys would like to go through each one, I can just skip through and go over the ones that I would like to discuss.
Yeah, give me a second here.
Okay.
Trying to find a review letter. Did we get a review letter?
Yes.
Goodness. I must have misplaced it. I'm sorry. Huh. Was it stapled in the copy? Anyone know?
It's behind the subdivision review application. If that helps.
Well, everything is. Yeah, I don't have it. I go right to the Mies fee schedule. Then to the map. Yeah, I don't have it. I'm sorry. So, Alex, you're
Yes,
up because I don't have a copy of it in front of me. You wanna lead through this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's just work through it so Chris is aware of what's going on. Do you want to go ahead and just address point by point?
Yeah, I can do that. So discussion item 1 talks about the existing tax parcels are non-conforming with respects to minimum lot area and various yard setbacks, and the reconfigured lots will exceed the minimum lot area and meet the required yard setbacks. There is another existing nonconformity, which is the front yard and the one side yard furthest to the south. These two items, we're not looking to remove any of the buildings or structures, so these can't be alleviated, but the rest of the issues are resolved.
Yeah, the point there was just that they fixed the nonconformities that they could, and the other ones that were existing, like the front yards that can't be changed, are still there. Just a note.
So overall, it's improvement.
It improved it, yes.
Comment 2 talks to the parcel being along Smoky Lane, which is a private road. The ultimate right-of-way line is depicted on the plan to establish the necessary lot areas and front yard setbacks. However, this area is not offered for dedication to the township because it is a private road. Comment 3 is the waivers. So if you guys want to go through the waivers now, we can, or we can come back to that at the very end. It's up to you guys.
I suggest we come back to them after we've discussed everything.
Okay. Comment 4 is that all new property corners in the ultimate right-of-way should be marked with concrete monuments. This is a will comply on our end. Number 5 is about a deed of consolidation to be recorded prior to plan recording. This one I did have a question for the solicitor on. I don't know if they're on the meeting here tonight, but in a similar project that we had in Hilltown, the solicitor did not see that it was required that we need to do a consolidation deed prior to recording the subdivision because all of these lots are under the same ownership and we're in the same situation here. So if your solicitor requires it, it's a will comply, but I just ask that that gets looked into.
Yeah, Mary Everly's not on the call, but I could certainly clarify that with her.
Okay.
This is John. If I can quickly interrupt, Chris, I sent you an electronic copy of the letter that we're reviewing. Hopefully you have it in your email.
And you're muted, Chris.
There we go. Thank you, John. I probably should have done that myself. Yeah, I have 2 copies of the Mies fee schedule in my packet. So that's what's going on. Did you send that to my CG Durstein or my Christian at Durstein?
Now you're getting picky.
Sorry. Hang on, I got it. Thank you.
All right, so we'd be on item 6 now. And this is just asking that we should document the existing on-site septic systems, that they're operational and operating satisfactory, to confirm that they are not needed to be replaced. And this is a will comply. VW Consultants had previously evaluated these systems, and I sent Steve an email with this letter earlier today. But yeah, that's
Yeah, I received a letter. It's dated December 1st, 2022 from VW Consultants, and it indicates that the systems are not malfunctioning.
Was the replacement testing done?
Well, it's not required because they're new lots. The
Okay.
question was if they found an issue with the existing systems, then, they need to find an area for replacement. But we only require replacement areas for new construction, and that's not what this is.
Okay.
I just checked it.
all right. So comment 7 is the verify or send out verification of notices to the adjoining neighbors. And this was done and was emailed to Greg and Steve.
Yeah, I have that. It was complete.
And then the last 2 comments, A and B, are both plan notes, and that's a will comply.
Alrighty, I guess we can move on to the waivers then.
Okay. So there are 3 waivers that we are asking for relief from. The first of which is the plan scale. The ordinance requires the minimum plan scale be 1 to 50, and we're proposing 1=40. We're just doing this because the property is so small and it's more legible at the better scale.
Anybody have an issue with that?
I don't.
Makes sense to me.
Okay by me.
And I always wonder if that's a bigger or a smaller scale.
Exactly.
The next waiver is waiver from road improvements, and that's because there's no development proposed as part of this lot line adjustment.
And it's a private road, right?
And yeah, that's correct.
So there'd be no fee in lieu.
Correct, because there's no new building lots.
Right.
Even if it was a public road, there wouldn't be a fee in lieu because there's no building lots.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that one.
Yeah, I'm fine with that as well.
Agreed.
And the final waiver is from curbs and sidewalks, and for the same reason, it's private road and there's no development proposed.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that one either.
Yeah, nor do I.
All right.
All right. Alex, you want me to take it back here?
Sure, feel free.
Thanks for your help.
No
Yeah,
problem.
feel free. So what are we after here? There's nothing outstanding, correct?
That's correct. We're seeking recommendation of plan approval here tonight.
Preliminary final.
Preliminary final, that's correct.
Is there any conditions needed here? I don't think there was there?
No, everything on Steve's letter would be will comply.
Yeah, the only conditions would be the clarification and recording of the deeds for the consolidation.
All right. So we'll make it a conditional preliminary final. Somebody want to make that motion?
This is Alex. I'll make that motion that we approve the plans as preliminary final condition on the issue with the deeds.
Okay. Can I get a second?
This is Andy. I'll second.
All right. Any more discussion needed?
Do we
Hearing
have to
none?
do we have to do anything with the approval of the waivers?
Oh, yes, we do.
Yeah,
Yes, we do. I'm sorry. Thank you. So yeah, let's hold off on this vote. Can we get a motion to approve recommending the waivers?
John, I'll make the motion.
This is Tim. I'll second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now back to the conditional preliminary final. We do have a second on that. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So you got your conditional preliminary and final.
All right. Thank you.
You got it. Good luck.
You're
Thanks.
welcome. Good luck.
Have a good
Have a
evening.
good night.
You too.
Thanks. All right, moving forward, we will move to Triple Net Investments. Mr. Murphy, you want to take the lead on this, or one of your staff there?
I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Justin. But as background, the Planning Commission may recall that at the sketch plan stage, we appeared at your meeting on August 9th and presented that sketch and had gotten some feedback about various issues. And as a result of that, Justin, through Dynamic Engineering, did submit in late September the fully engineered preliminary plan. That plan was the subject, as we all know, of multiple review letters that Steve's office has issued, dated November 2nd. There was a companion engineering detail review letter that accompanied that. We've also seen the reviews from CKS, Bucks County Planning Commission, and McMahon. Most recently, Justin met last week with Steve to go over the items in his review letter. And based on that meeting, what we thought we'd do tonight is not only review with everybody the plan that Justin is, or you guys have put on the screen, and Justin can take control and we'll go through it, but also, unless Steve Balla wants to do it differently, only highlight those items in his review letter that probably deserve comment tonight, because in large measure, I think Justin and Steve understand what needs to happen with respect to the plan and revisions to it. So hopefully we can short circuit maybe some unnecessary conversation. But again, we'll defer to Steve about that. But I think in the first instance, perhaps Justin can pick it up from here and go through the plan and then highlight those things in the review letter that we'd like to emphasize or talk about tonight.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Ed. And if I do have control of the screen, I'll share my screen if that's all right. Let's do this. Share. Share. All right.
There you go.
All right, good. All right, good evening, everyone. Just thanks for the introduction there, Ed. So I have a series of exhibits that we'll just start off with tonight, just to kind of give lay the background of the property and the project, and then we can start diving into the letters and my discussion with Steve last week. So the first exhibit that we're presenting is just an aerial exhibit of the property in question that is labeled PIQ. That is, and there's two yellow lines. The property in question is just the inside yellow line. That outside yellow line showing a 200-foot setback or buffer around the property, just for proximity to the neighbors that we can discuss later. So the property in question right there is the property. It's located at the corner of Quarry Road and State Road. The property is approximately 95 acres. What we are proposing to do as part of this application is subdivide off approximately 30 acres of that property and leave the remaining 64 acres intact, untouched, and no development or no improvements proposed on the top part of that property. If you zoom in a little bit here, you'll see that subdivision line is shown in red. The bottom lot is referred to as Lot A. I'll be referring to Lot A almost exclusively tonight because that is the subject of the application and the project that we have in front of you. Again, 29.63 acres, located at the corner of State Road and Quarry Road. Next exhibit as this loads. I apologize. This is just an aerial overlay of what is being proposed. The application in front of you is a warehouse development, 363,000 square feet. With that, incidental to the use, we have 87 loading stalls, 77 trailer storage spaces. So the loading stalls obviously on the north side of the building. If we're just going to call it north, the top of the plan. The loading stalls located at the top portion, 77 trailer storage stalls, and 286 parking stalls around the perimeter of the building. You'll see that there's a lot of green space located towards the back of the site. We did our best to locate this as centrally as possible away from the neighbors and to provide buffering, which we'll get into in a minute. Stormwater management is being fully managed on this site, not on Lot B. Everything being proposed is going to be managed on our property through 2 basins, which are going to be located underground. Managed release basin and a spray irrigation basin, which is a capture and reuse, which is going to be using this back portion of the site, basically a sprinkler system. It's going to be held underground and irrigated over a controlled release program in compliance with the township ordinance. As we move through, this is just a little bit more detailed of a view. We can switch back. This just shows how the points of access with the landscaping on the property. So we're only taking access off of Quarry Road. There'll be 2 full access driveways located off of Quarry Road. The majority of all truck traffic will be taking from the northern driveway. That's the access to the full truck court. Trucks will either back into the loading docks, back into a trailer storage stall, and then leave through the same driveway on Quarry Road. Employees will be using the southern driveway. That driveway cannot handle truck traffic, so all truck traffic will happen up here. Access to Quarry Road as well. There is no planned access to State Road through this application. We are making a few connections for utilities, but there is no new driveway off of State Road.
Justin, just as a matter of scale, could you give us an idea how far it is from that easternmost parking lot corner to the property line?
Easternmost property line from right here.
Yeah, right. To the property line down there, just below it.
Oh, just below it. So we're approximately, I'm going to say we're about 25 feet off. This line is a 25-foot setback. So
Okay.
that closest point of that parking lot is no closer than 25 feet off of that property line.
And it's similar to the point on the other side of the state road access that doesn't exist.
Other point of state road access up here.
No, I'm sorry. The one down in the middle of the building.
Oh, okay.
It's close to the parking.
Of the Lutheran property.
Correct.
Right.
So yeah. So what you'll see here is there's a 25-foot setback on this one as well. So we are no closer than 25 feet at that point as well. That one down here, actually, this is a little that alignment doesn't look correct on this plan, but if you look on this one, this is actually drawn correctly over top of the aerial. That's actually 50 feet from this closest point of this corner to the parking lot is what we have. We have a 25-foot residential buffer, and then on top of that, a 25-foot side yard setback. So the two of them, you're the closest point at that corner is 50 feet.
Thank you.
Sure. As Mr. Murphy alluded to, I met with Steve last week just to review his review letter, both the overall review and then the technical review. We went through a couple of comments that we obviously need to address and come to comply with some of his comments. There's nothing in his letter that I see as being difficult to comply with. We're going to revise the plans and do so. So at this point, I mean, we can walk through letter. We can walk through some of the highlights of our discussion. Or Steve, I'll turn it over to you, how you see best to handle or go from here.
Well, Justin, first, could you just describe what's going on with that property that's in between the PPL site and the Lutheran home, the two parcels that are there, and what that area is being used for?
Steve, you broke up in the beginning there. What was the question?
If you could just describe what the intent is for that strip of property between PPL and the Lutheran home and the two parcels that exist there.
Right in here.
Yes.
Sure. So that, as you see on this plan, there's no proposed development within these two parcels. So it does exist as a separate parcel with frontage on State Road. No improvements are being proposed. That is not going to be developed at all. We are showing our utilities coming through and tying into State Road at this point. And then this upper portion, which is, I'll call it the peninsula portion of the existing parcel, again, undeveloped as you see it here, going to be using it as green space, and no proposed development within that area.
But the small parcel that's out on State Road, that's currently owned by North American Drager, and that's going to be part of the purchase of Triple Net, although they're not going to consolidate it. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is part of the Drager property. There's no plans that we're not going to consolidate it, but it is going to be part of this application. But again, we're taking utilities access through State Road, but nothing, no buildings or any structures are going to occur on that property.
Thank you.
Justin, I think Steve also would be curious, your sketch or the plan that's on the screen shows that notched area as being wooded. I'm assuming that one of the corollary questions is, I assume those trees are going to remain.
Those trees will remain. It's easier to see on this sketch without the overlay. So there is a wooded area that occurs in here. Again, I mean, we're going to be running utilities which come from the building and have to come through this area to tie into State Road. So limited disturbance of those trees as necessary for utility, but along the Lutheran community, which I guess is a priority here, is going to remain. All utilities are running along, I'm going to call it the eastern side of that peninsula. And limited clearing only to the extent necessary to run utilities.
How close to the property line can you run the utilities?
We can run them 5-10 feet off, but then if sanitary, water, electric, there's separation requirements between all the utilities that we run there. So as close to that property line that we can run them, we will, just to maintain that buffer and that area.
Right. What do you have for item number 4?
Item number 4, I'm assuming in the overall letter, which is
Yes. The parking.
okay. So this comment just pertains to the amount of parking on site and the ordinance provisions for maximum number of employees. So we submitted a narrative basically summarizing the proposed development. We are proposing a maximum of 213 employees per maximum on the maximum permitted shift. That would, applicants should clarify the basis for proposed employee count. So that is the amount of employees that we, based on the amount of parking that we have, that is what we're anticipating for the maximum shift. So that's how we came to that number. I think that was how do we get to that number of 213? I think that, Steve, that's what you're asking for there.
Yeah, it was twofold. One was a clarification, because I think there was a misstatement somewhere that the employees were based on zoning, and our zoning doesn't establish a employee limit.
No. So I mean, we went
But I guess
through.
the question though is that, would that be, from the developer's experience with other buildings, is that a reasonable number of employees for this size of building?
Yes, it is. So, I mean, we do a lot of marketing, and for this size building, that is plenty of parking for the size.
And we might as well touch on this. We didn't really talk about it. Is, to my understanding, there's no end user identified yet for this building.
That is
Correct.
That is correct.
It's not, right.
And the other warehouse that we've been working on to date, there was a lot of discussion about them setting it up for 2 users that had a secure parking area in the truck court that, it had to split the traffic from one side to the other. Would anything like that be proposed here? Do you have an idea of how many users might use this building?
At this time, we do not. we obviously there's the option of splitting it up into 2 users. We could do that, but right now this is just being proposed as a spec warehouse with no users yet.
But if it were multiple users, you could not do that concept with a secure parking lot. Is that correct?
We could not usually,
Or maybe rear and not to the front.
so it would be at a maximum we would have here is 2 users max. So you would have an office in the front, office in the side, and we could split the building down the middle or 2/3, whatever the ratio is. The secure parking is a little bit difficult in this situation because you usually see that when you have a secondary ring road around the truck court to allow users not to pass through each other's truck courts to access their side of the building. So in this situation, it would be an unsecure, separated truck court just because of the main access road that we have here. Again, I think the other user that you guys are looking at has a ring road, and they're able to secure and separate those 2 users.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because there was a lot of discussion with that other application of how that would work and why they could do certain things and not do certain things. I just wanted you to clarify for the planning commission what the
No.
intent was here.
Good point.
Ed, maybe you could address that issue. They were saying it was a homeland security issue to have secure truck bays.
Is that directed to Ed, or can I jump in there?
Well, if you have an answer, sure, you can jump in too.
No, I mean, I don't know who their user was, and maybe they did have a user in mind that required them to have secure truck bays, but unsecured truck bays is common. I mean, we do it when you have buildings like this that are split up into multiple users. So it is not a requirement for us to have secure truck bays. Again, I don't know what the other application, who their user is, and what their requirements were for the lease, so I'm not going to speak to that. But for this spec type building, we can have an unsecured truck court. And I use the word unsecure lightly. I mean, obviously there'll be security on the building and obviously security lighting, maybe fencing, we'll see, but unsecure as to separation between the 2 uses and fully fenced in.
So you're saying it's really a user issue, not this style of building or the industry, let's say. It's the secure truck parking is really a function of what user
Right.
is in the building.
Correct.
Yeah. Look, the preference, as you can see, and as Justin described how the building operates, the ideal would be to have a single user. And if we can do that, that would be our preference too. But at most, for all the limitations Justin just described, it would be a maximum of 2. And you're right, Steve, depending on the nature of the user, it may or may not trigger, quote, homeland security issues, unquote. But having unsecured operations now, depending on the user, is pretty common in the industry when you have multi-user buildings. So that's where we're at with that. But clearly, we would love to have a single user operator there.
This is John. In terms of hours of operations, since you don't have a user signed up for this facility, can you comment on what expected hours of operation would be?
Sure. So, and I know we have some from the applicant here as well. They can jump in as necessary, but a lot of these buildings, it's a 24-hour facility. So there's multiple shifts. Obviously, the daytime shifts are going to be more intense than the overnight shifts, but without that user, we don't have specifics. Your concerns more towards lighting, trucks? Can I gear my response in a certain way, which will help your question? I mean, there's a couple things that we could do depending on how we want to, whatever your concerns are.
I guess related to parking would be if it's a possibility for 24-hour operation, did you consider shift overlap as part of your parking space calculations for employees?
Correct. Yes, we did. So the parking spaces, we have 283 parking spaces on the property, or 286, I'm sorry. Again, the max shift we're looking at is around 213. There is overlap. Obviously, we usually see the shifts of like a 90, 70, 30, 40% of the overnight shift, depending on what the user is. So yes, the short answer to your question is there is room for overlapping shifts.
Thank you.
All right. I guess moving forward, I would go to number 5 here. For your buffering, Steve is suggesting that berms might be an adequate addition to your buffering. What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So, and Steve and I did talk about this the other day. Due to the topography of our site, we did this a little differently. Obviously, we pulled the building as central to the area as possible. Obviously, this being the closest pinch point to the adjoining neighbors. But due to the topography, this entire site sits at a higher elevation than the Lutheran community down here.
Right.
So what we did is, instead of planning along the perimeter, is if you were to look at this from a cross-sectional standpoint, if this is 10, 15 feet lower than the driveway, plantings down here doesn't do you a whole lot when you're trucking all your activities up here. So we pulled all the plantings around the perimeter of our use, which in a way is almost like a bermed planting effect, because we're sloping up to here, have a flat spot at the top of our parking lot. All the plantings are directly along the property, along the parking area, which is going to be your intense use that you're looking to screen. I use the word intense based on just the usage of the property. So any of the parking that occurs here, you're going to want to screen that from the neighbors. Installing a berm down here in this vicinity doesn't do us a whole lot of good in this situation. So we are proposing it to be at the top part of the hill, which in a way serves, but we can also supplement this if there wants to be additional plantings down here to just, help buffer it from a different angle, a little bit closer to the adjoining use. We have no issue supplementing with some plantings. But the berm effect, I think this is accomplishing the intent of Steve's comment. If I'm not trying to speak for Steve, but that was just my response to him during our discussion.
What is the height difference between the edge of the parking lot and the property line?
I will get that for you in 1 minute. I want to say it's between 10 and 12 feet from the edge of the parking down to the property line here.
And Justin, your description there was that the grading around the parking lot will have a plateau or an extension from the parking lot grade before it reaches the slope. So those plantings would be up on the top level or the parking lot level, not on the side slopes down.
That's correct.
To the lower grade.
That's correct. So if you see here, so along the bottom of this property, and of course I won't be able to find a contour label here, but the parking lot's 428 elevation. You're already at 420. So as you get down here, you're about 418. So you're at least 10 feet from the point of the parking lot down to the property line here, if not 12 feet. So by planting all the plantings up around here, around the 427 elevation, that allows you to have more than the maximum effect of that berm. Even if we were to berm down here, that berm would need to be about 10 to 12 feet high to get the effect of screening this parking lot.
What's the grade going to be from your parking lot down to the property line?
It'll be, we're transitioning back down to existing grade, but the facility itself is at a higher elevation as we grade back down to existing. So we're not grading down here. This is all existing grade. So you'll be back down to existing grade off the edge of the parking lot.
I guess my question would be, what's the slope?
Off of the back of the parking lot, or off of just the slope around here is going to be whatever's naturally occurring. We're not touching it, so this looks pretty flat.
I think he's asking, are you using 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope on your side slope?
4-to-1. There you go. Sorry.
Very good. That's the right answer.
Perfect. Yeah, I should have phrased it that way. So.
Well, he's dense, Chris. He's dense.
Yeah,
I was trying to trick him a little bit.
I'm not the smartest, so thanks for clarifying.
He just keeps talking. He just keeps talking.
Justin, another question for you. I think Steve was getting at the use of the topsoil. You're going to generate a boatload of topsoil. It shouldn't be leaving the site. What are the plans for that material?
So again, that is part of our plan. We're looking to spread it. I know, but there's no plans to export it off the site. Obviously, this site has been designed to be as close to a balanced site as possible. We are balanced. We're not proposing any export, obviously, without unforeseen circumstances as we get into construction. So everything will be left on site, spread around on the areas available to us. As you can see, there's some additional green space back here. So no plans on exporting off site.
We may need to have a little bit more discussions on that because it's not always desirable to have 3 feet of topsoil in your fields back there, but we could talk about that more.
If that's, yeah, we'll talk about that more offline.
The township will take it. If you want to get rid of it.
We're open to that as well.
All right. What else do we need to hit on here, Steve?
Well, let's just keep moving down there to number 7, just so you understand how the building is set up architecturally and how the building height meets our standard.
Go ahead, Justin.
Sure. So number 7 is just a explanation of how the building height calculation was determined. So your ordinance requires that the building height be measured along the average grade along the front elevation of the building. So the elevation at the front along Quarry Road, our frontage is on Quarry Road, so the building height elevation is taken from the average grade along this facade of the building to the maximum point in the roof. What we are doing along this portion, there is going to be a portion of the building which is below grade. So they're about 5 to 6 feet of the building will be under the surface of the grade, will be grading up against the building, so that the total height along the front of the building is no more than 35 feet, which is the ordinance requirement. That allows us to maintain the clear height within the building and maintains compliance with the zoning ordinance as per definition of building height. Still compliant.
What is the clear height inside the building?
Clear height in this building will be 30, and I can confirm, I think it is 36 foot clear.
Okay, so it's not significantly higher.
Sorry, it's 32 clear. 36 was obviously desired, and we could not make that work. So 32 clear.
And then there's a pitched roof on the building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Justin, what's the elevation at that high spot in the middle near the match line?
The elevation of the roof,
The ground elevation there.
429.
And how does that compare to the elevation at the front?
Along at the front of the building, you are 431.
Thank you.
Sure. So again, it's you're not going to notice it from the street. It's just something we just wanted to call attention to make sure you're understanding it.
And I guess the last sentence in that is, will there be roof mounted HVAC equipment, or is there equipment rooms, or do you know that at this point?
Still to be determined. There'll be a power pit around the building. Obviously anything mounted above that level will be obviously compliant with the ordinance, but we're still working that out.
Okay. I guess we could just move to number 8, which is traffic impact. That's always a concern of the township, these larger projects. As everyone's aware, this traffic will funnel to Route 309 along State Road. If you could, Justin, could you just summarize what some of the findings of your traffic report were?
Sure. And Corey Chase from Dynamic Traffic's on the line, so I'm going to get him on just so he can address any comments that come up from there. So Corey,
Yeah, take that, Justin. Thanks. So good evening, everyone. Corey Chase with Dynamic Traffic. As Steve correctly notes, we did have the opportunity to speak with McMahon as we were crafting the scope of study for our traffic impact study. So they outlined the intersections that were obviously going to be a concern, as Steve correctly notes. It's Quarry Road, then going east on State Road, heading back towards 309. So we studied the Quarry Road intersection. We also studied Meeting House, as well as the ramps to north and southbound Route 309. McMahon also let us know that there were several pending developments in the area that we would need to account for in our traffic study. So those were all included as part of the background traffic in our analysis. We took our development and obviously included the Wawa, the warehouse that's on Meeting House Road, as well as the warehouse that's proposed along Cat Hill Road. So those are all factored into our overall traffic impact study. We looked at the intersection evaluations up and down the State Road corridor. We're proposing to add left and right turn lanes at the intersection of Quarry Road and State Road as part of the improvements to our application. What was that? Sorry. Nothing. Okay. So we are proposing intersection improvements at State Road and Quarry Road. We're going to do some radii improvements as well to accommodate the truck turning movements to make sure that there's no substantial impacts on the State Road corridor. So we did receive a review letter from McMahon that was dated November 3rd, 2022. We are in the process of preparing a comprehensive response back to McMahon, addressing all their comments. So, we look forward to working through those comments with them. Looking forward to working with Steve as well, addressing any of his concerns. But be happy to answer any questions that the commission has at this time.
I have none.
This is John. Again, since you don't know who the tenant's going to be, you probably don't have the specifics, but you made a statement about traffic going towards 309. Are you assuming that 100% of the traffic is going to go towards 309, that none of it's going to go west towards Telford?
No, so as part of the distribution of traffic, and you're correct, we don't have a tenant, which is very common when we're doing these traffic studies. I would say that probably 95% of the analysis that we do for speculative warehouse buildings don't have a tenant at the time we're proposing the traffic study. So we look at the prevailing traffic conditions. We also obviously, the proximity to 309 factors into how we distribute traffic. But no, we didn't assume 100% of all the employee traffic was going to 309. There was a small portion that was distributed to the west as well.
Thank you.
This is Andy. Do you have an estimated number of trucks per day?
I could get you that information. We focus on peak hours, when we do these analysis. I'm sure you guys have all heard that before. So, we're looking at the peak hour traffic generation rather than the total daily traffic generation, but I could certainly get you that number.
Thank you.
Corey, this is Alex. Were you finding a need for a traffic light at Quarry and State?
Right now, there's not currently the need for that. I know that we've had some preliminary discussions with McMahon as to the potential to install a traffic light at that intersection. So those discussions are ongoing. We did find, as I mentioned, that we are going to need to install turning lanes. So there would be eastbound left turn lane and a westbound right turn lane. So there'll be dedicated turning lanes at that intersection as part of this development. But again, like I mentioned, we did receive the review letter. We're still obviously working through a comprehensive response to that and look forward to working with them to resolve the comments.
Were those turn lanes just on Quarry Road or also on State Road?
On State Road.
Yeah, the turn lanes exist on Quarry Road, John. I think the one question that I believe McMahon had in their review, I know I talked to Justin about it, is whether or not the turn lanes on Quarry Road need to be extended. Does there need to be more stacking length in the turn lanes on Quarry Road?
And that's a good question, Steve. We did look into that. We did find that the stacking for the turn lanes on Quarry was sufficient as they currently exist. The only modifications we were proposing there, as I mentioned, is we are proposing some radius modifications to open those radii up to better facilitate truck turning movements.
The proposed cold storage, Quarry Road was going to be their outlet to get out the 309, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they'll come around from Cat Hill to Quarry and up to State Road.
Right.
So
I'm assuming that McMahon has had that factored in if they did that homogenized scope. Would that be accurate?
They did. That was one of the developments that they asked us to include as part of our analysis. So we had the warehouse that's proposed on Meeting House. We had the one proposed on Cat Hill, and then we also included traffic from the Wawa.
Yeah, so that traffic was already included in this study.
Right. Okay.
Now, whether or not there might be some specific improvements that would follow with the cold storage building, if that ultimately gets all the relief it needs and gets built. You know, I could foresee that, say, this project does the right and left turn lane on State Road. I could foresee that, you know, something else such as extending the stacking length on Coy Road, you know, might be something that would be done with the other project if and when that comes through. As far as the rest of Quarry Road in your frontage, I mean, I understand, and I think most of the Planning Commission members are familiar with that. That Quarry Road was widened years ago, mostly as part of the North American Drager project, and well, the township widened that intersection many years ago too. That's where the turn lanes came from. But I believe your study shows that the trucks turning in and out of that development, there's no need to widen Quarry Road. Is that correct, for the turning movements and safe egress and ingress to the property?
Yeah, that's correct, Steve.
And I think you probably find that these entrances are narrower than the Veris project, but again, I believe that's all a function of Quarry Road is much wider along the frontage of this site than Meeting House Road is at the Veris site. So,
How wide is Quarry there?
it's 30 plus feet, I believe.
Yeah, it is. And that's correct, Steve. We do have the advantage of, the extra width in that cartway that allows us to make the driveway entrances more narrow, because we can take advantage of that width. Yeah, it's about 31, 32 feet in width.
Right, and it's fully curbed, and there's storm sewer and whatnot along the frontage already for the most part. So just if anyone's looking at, why are the entrances different or not as big as what was on the last project you looked at, it's mostly a function of, Quarry Road just being a wider, better access to begin with.
Okay.
So I guess just to sum that up, ultimately, we're not talking about final improvements right now. You need to get the revised study and information back to McMahon, and we'll go from there.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, this is Andy. You may have said it, and if you did, I apologize. Is there a turning lane off of 152 off of State Road? If you're traveling, towards 309 and let's say making a left onto Quarry there, or there are trucks making a left onto Quarry, is there a turning lane on 152?
There's not now, but we're going to propose one as part of this development.
Correct. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We'll also be proposing one on the opposite. So anybody coming from 309 to the site will have the ability to use a dedicated right turn lane to turn right off of State Road onto Quarry.
Hmm.
Do you believe you have adequate right of way there to do that work? Or we need to call right away?
We're currently looking at that now, Steve. So, we had that intersection surveyed. So we're working with Justin and with the applicant to determine the extent of the existing right of way there, where the ultimate right of way is located, and specifically where those improvements are going to fall.
Yeah, well, there should be wider right of way on the North American Drager corner. I believe we acquired that back when that work was done years ago.
There is. We're looking at the PPL property, and then obviously the industrial facilities on the opposite side of the road as well, confirming where those right of way lines exist.
PPL was subject to a land development plan also. There might be additional right of way there. If you have questions on that, let me know. I could find you some old plans if need be.
Great. We appreciate that, Steve.
If we move on, I guess just keep hitting these road things is number 9. That's the general road improvement comment. As we just discussed, Quarry Road's already 30-foot wide, has curb on it. So the really only thing they're missing from our normal road frontage improvements is sidewalk. And there's another comment related to sidewalk and trails a little bit later on. Maybe we'll wait till the trail comment to tackle that.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I got some questions there.
We skipped to number 11, site grading. I think we touched on it. This is how could I say this? This site is more level than the drum construction site is for the prior warehouse, but because of the size of this building, it still requires extensive grading. And I think Justin touched on the fact that they have graded it to balance the site. I don't know. Did you give me a cut fill analysis?
We did not, Steve, and as part of the next submission, we will, but it will show. I mean, I'm aware of the situation on the other plan, and we are going to be compliant. It's just as similar to them. The cut fill on this site will balance.
Okay. Stormwater management, I don't think we need to talk about that in detail. There's a bunch of comments to address.
That's Steve. There'll be will complies. I think there's additional calculations need to be provided to you. I think the design itself works.
Yeah. All right, so let's skip ahead to number 13. That gets us back to the parking lot plantings and afforestation requirements of the ordinance.
Yay.
All right. Do you want to start, Steve, with the afforestation? I think that might be we do have an exhibit prepared. Sure. So based on the requirements of your ordinance, we are required to plant, based on the afforestation comment, the requirements of your ordinance, we're required to plant upwards of 1,977 seed sapling trees on this property in order to comply with the ordinance. So what we did in anticipation of tonight's meeting, we had our landscape architect take all the areas. Now there's significant amount of green space still left on this property based on what we're allowed to develop, but took the green space available to him and, for lack of a better word, peppered it with these trees. You'll see that. Don't look at all the trees in black and white. Look at all the trees that are labeled here or shown here in different shading of color. Even at that ratio, which is a pretty tight spacing based on what your ordinance requires, we were only able to get approximately 680 trees on the property as is. That means that we are still deficient by 1,297 trees, maxing out the area available to us within our property. And that's strictly based on the requirements of your ordinance. Again, we're not asking for an impervious variance. We're not asking for a building coverage variance. So we're not maximizing the development area of this property. We still can't comply with the afforestation requirements. Furthermore, the area that is shown here to be planted with the afforestation trees is our spray irrigation area. So even though this could technically work, we are going to have sprinkler lines running all through this property, which is going to serve as our stormwater management basin. Similar up here, it'll be steep grade. They'll be grading up here and additional stormwater management features here. So the intent of this plan is just really to show you how difficult it is to comply with that requirement, and to respectfully ask just to not do it and just provide a fee in lieu of for you guys to plant these trees in an area in the township where they're probably better suited. I don't think we're not really going to trick anybody by foresting an area off to the side. That's not really what the intent of the ordinance is, but this is just for visual purposes.
How many trees could you feasibly plant without interrupting your spray irrigation?
Probably 200, maybe less, because anything back here in this entire area, and I I do have another plan here to show you exactly where that is, but this entire area is spray irrigation or stormwater management. So you'll be left with this area, and then if we really want to do this is not desirable, obviously, in front of the building with sight distance and everything else. So probably about 100, 200 trees max. And again, this is in addition to the landscaping, which is already proposed around your site, which is pretty substantial as well.
Steve, would any of that wooded area in the peninsula count towards afforestation?
Yes.
Was that?
Yeah,
taken
you just
into
have to make
account?
up the difference of.
And again, that was included in the calculation. Still required to have 1,900 on site.
Yeah. And I really haven't had the opportunity to look at this to see how it's worked out. So, that's something I could look at a little bit closer to see how they did their numbers and how it meets, or, how it matches up with what the intent of the ordinance was.
The lot currently is basically a field, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a farm field. The little portion down here would be the wooded area, if we want to call that little peninsula wooded.
Right. And do the buffer plantings count towards that number of the 1,900 or no? That's separate.
Separate.
Okay. How many trees are there approximately in the buffering plantings? Do you have any idea?
I could give you a total number of trees being proposed on our application. If you just bear with me 1 second, I'll pull up the landscape plan. Again, ground coverage, you can see this is our land schedule. It's not totaled up, but you can see the amount of trees that's being planted as part of this application. It's significant. I mean, roughly over, just on trees, you're probably in upwards of, 400 or 500. No, significantly more, probably 600, and then evergreen ground cover, shade trees. So there's a significant amount of plantings being proposed as part of this application.
What density of trees per acre do you assume?
It's just based on your ordinance. So again, if I look at the tree replacement plan, the calculation assumes 1 tree per 100 square feet of forested area. So that's your ratio. I think every single one of these circles on the plan is about 10 feet. So you're clustering them together. Again, this was prepared by our landscape architect, and it does meet the criteria of your ordinance.
So how many additional acres of land would you need to fill in with trees?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but look, if we're looking at it this way, if we're planting 680 on the balance of this site that's available to us, I mean, you would probably be looking at 4 times the area that's open on our site to plant those trees.
Do you happen to know what the acreage is of that quote open area?
I don't, Steve. I can easily do a takeoff and get that for you.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, and this is one reason why I'll need to look at this closer, is there is a calculation for the number of trees, but the goal, let's say, of the ordinance was to afforest, to meet a 20% forested minimum on the site. So I guess the question for you to look at is, like, not worrying about how many trees you can stuff on there. Is that open area 20% of the site, or what would be 20% of the site? So maybe you can't put all the trees for the calculation, but you might have the area available.
I'll put it this way, Steve. So we're proposing 56% impervious on the property. So for the most part, that area in the center is your impervious area. So all the green space would be upwards of about 40-ish.
Right. So you probably have the acreage, and that may be something that needs to be analyzed sort of from that standpoint, as opposed to just strictly the number of trees. Because it was never the intent of the ordinance to say you need to have 20% forest. If you don't have it, you have to plant trees, and those trees might take up 40% of your property. That really wasn't the goal of the ordinance. It was that the new trees should be in that 20% area. It may be that the calculation doesn't work exactly right to be able to stuff that many trees in there, but so all I'm saying is we could look at this with you to see how it would or wouldn't meet the ordinance requirements.
Correct. And I guess in any sense, it would most likely be a waiver, obviously, for just on quantity at the very least.
Yeah.
And then fee in lieu of. Going back, I'll go to 13A.
Yeah, I was going to go there.
13A. So
Steve, I'm going to talk to Mary Everly about that provision in the ordinance too. So I think probably all of us need to huddle a little bit about that. So between now and the next time we get together, we'll try to sort that out to include what you said and some concerns I have about it. So hopefully we'll come to some understanding about what makes sense there.
13A is its respect to providing 35% shading within a parking lot. So again, when through the discussions with Steve, I think this largely pertains to the truck court area and really just the inability to provide that 35%, given the use and how these buildings are actually used and operated. For us to comply with 35%, you would have trees basically in this area, just throughout. And given the use of how trucks come in, they need to have full area to circulate, to back in the docks, come out of the docks. It's just not possible to provide that. And I believe the intent of the ordinance and the intent of every ordinance that pertains to shading of parking lots, it always comes down to heat island effect. Obviously, shade trees provide shade, which lowers the temperature of the asphalt. So as storm water hits the ground, it runs off and doesn't run into the stream at a hotter temperature, which causes a bunch of issues from an environmental standpoint. So hearing that concern and knowing how these things operate and knowing our stormwater, I just want to give the Planning Commission a little bit of background. So this building is going to have a white roof. So obviously a white roof is a little different than asphalt shingles or dark roof. It's already a cooling effect on that regard. Stormwater, which hits the roof, is going to be discharged immediately to an underground basin. So there's going to be an underground basin located in the top corner of this plan up here. And there's a second underground basin, which is going to be located, and I just moved off the page, located in this region down here underneath the parking lot. Underground basins, being underground, already have a cooling effect. So anything coming off of the roof, which is at a cooler temperature already, goes underground, cools down before it is then, in this situation, delayed in a slowed. This is going to be our capture and reuse basin, which is going to be actually, this is the managed release basin, which is going to be slowly discharged back into the storm sewer at a controlled rate. This one will be held and then spray irrigated all through the back here over land, which then cools it even more before running into any stream that doesn't infiltrate. So again, I know that the intent of that ordinance is to provide shading of parking lots, but between the white roof, the concrete within the truck court, it's already going to have a cooling effect on the stormwater. And we are dealing with the heat island and the thermal effects of stormwater on asphalt in different, with different stormwater BMVs versus shade trees, which, given the climate that we're in, there's a large portion of the year which those trees don't have leaves on them anyway. So just wanted to give the board that kind of background and clarity on the stormwater design.
So you are proposing concrete in the truck area?
Yeah, so the building with a white roof, you'll see here on the plan that there's right now proposing concrete along portions of that truck court. And again, that's really, that's more of an operational need, but it does have a thermal lowering effect as well.
But just to be clear, it's not the entire truck parking areas. It's those, more or less those strips, the pad sites for the jacks.
That's correct. Pad sites for the jacks right now. Yes.
Would you be willing to consider extending that back from the jacks position all the way back to the building?
So just so that this entire dock area would be concrete?
Concrete, right.
Yes.
And
I mean,
maybe the storage bays as well in the back.
we can look into that. I think this area would be a large portion of that being concrete. I can talk to the obviously the client about putting it back here as well. But again, I think just want to make sure we're clear. I mean, a large amount of runoff is coming off of this roof. And if we then change this portion to concrete, that's a significant portion as well. So, and everything that hits this entire parking lot gets discharged underground. So it gets collected in the storm basins, gets collected, and then gets cooled underground. Nothing is running right off our site, off of an asphalt area, into a stream. So the closest stream anything would go to is running obviously down through here. A portion of this runoff will get discharged into the storm sewer system and then run down to that stream. But it's a long distance away, so there's a long cooling effect. And again, if that's the intent of the ordinance of the 35% shade trees, we are meeting that in other ways, which is not just a township requirement, even though it's kind of hidden in this comment. It's also a PADEP comment for the MPDS that we're managing thermal effects as well.
I think just for the, to be able to compare apples to apples, and we've asked every developer to at least also calculate what shading percentage you're at now. What is technically what is the deficiency and what number of trees does that relate to, just so we could compare that with other applications.
Sure. So if we're say 10% shade trees, find out what the tree equivalent to the 25 missing is, and provide that to you. Got it.
You say you're at 10%?
No, I was just throwing numbers out there.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So just to respond to Steve's comment, he wants to know what the tree equivalent is to the deficiency of percentages.
Right.
That can be provided. But that would be, in any case, it would be a waiver requested and obviously a fee in lieu of for the trees not planted.
Right.
And then Steve, just moving on to 13C, I think this all kind of corresponds to that as well, that the deficiencies in the landscaping, mainly to the shade trees, and would be waivers that would be required.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get them all listed out in your waiver request. So that's all clear.
Okay. We talked about the landscape berm and fence between the parking areas and residential properties. I think we already discussed that.
Well, we didn't, I guess we we discussed about how you were going to do the landscape plantings. I guess we did not touch on, because it wasn't part of that other comment, that the ordinance requirement is for landscaping with a fence between parking areas and residential properties. You're not proposing a fence in those buffer plantings at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not at this point. So
I guess the
obviously,
question for the township is there an interest in having a fence somewhere to supplement?
Was there going to be a perimeter fence on the property itself?
not proposed at this time. And again, I mean, we're proposing the plantings at this higher level. Any fence down here would be, 10 to 15 feet lower than the parking lot.
Not even for security purposes?
No, not at this time. I mean, the building's going to be secure, obviously, and through other means.
Could an exhibit? I'm saying this wrong, but in your resubmission, could you provide us an exhibit that say the closest residential properties are down at Lutheran Community, and could you do a cross section down there that would give a good visual of where the level of those homes are in the Lutheran Community, and that the embankment up to the parking lot and how much higher that is, and what how you're proposing the plantings there?
Yeah, so pretty much a view looking this direction from there going on.
Right.
Yeah, we can do that.
And maybe, maybe a section, drawing also, so we could see, visually our discussion earlier about how much lower the units are in the Lutheran community.
Yep.
Because the only other residential properties is Wellington Village, and you're actually butting up against the open space in Wellington Village, which I believe is wooded. It's next to the Landis Supermarket. I guess it's a little bit wooded up in that corner there.
Yeah, so nothing's occurring back in this area. So the closest proximity is, like I said, from this backyard. I mean, we'll say from the property line we're 50 feet, but even at that rate, you're still about 150 feet to the closest parking lot.
Oh, I forgot. There's that house way in the back of Landis Supermarket. I always forget that's back there. It was always one of the family members. I don't know who lives there now, but anyway, I think that would assist the planning commission in getting a feel for how the buffering will work back there.
We can provide that.
I don't know if the planning commission members had any other comment regarding, buffering between the Lutheran home.
It looks like there's already some trees at the back of the Lutheran community properties. So between the homes there and the open field, it looks like there's at least a line of trees already.
Correct.
And those will remain.
And you can supplement with more plantings down there?
We could.
Yeah, what we've done, Chris, I know I was just thinking of that. Sometimes we've asked people to add, evergreen trees where there's all deciduous trees. So you get a little bit more of that, all year round
Right.
buffer instead of, when all the leaves are off the trees, you see right through it.
Right. A fence doesn't drop leaves.
True.
I'm also thinking, Steve, I think there's an isolation distance from the stormwater spray heads to the property line. So maybe they could work at, putting the afforestation trees within that buffer distance and kind of maximize the isolation from the adjoining properties that way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I mean, if I had a choice between buffering plantings and saplings, I'd go with buffering plantings. It seemed to get more bang for your buck, at least in the first 10, 15 years.
Gotcha, Chris.
And can that be done? What do we need for buffering in the back? That you do have that house behind Landis.
Yeah, well, I think their proposal now, they moved what would be buffer plantings, the number of buffer plantings out along the perimeter, and they just pulled them all back to the parking lot. But I see what I think you're saying, Chris, is if we added some trees, say evergreens, to improve the buffer right at those old tree rows, that could potentially be considered in lieu of, say, the afforestation trees or some other tree requirement.
Right. Yeah, I'd be willing to swap out numbers on buffering plantings for saplings for sure. If we can, whatever the deficiency was going to be that they would be paying fee in lieu of, I could see trading some afforestation plantings for buffering plantings.
Yeah, and I think, you could fairly say 2, 3, 4 times a sapling for a full grown evergreen, 6-foot evergreen, something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I want to see the Lutheran community protected as much as possible. I mean, I understand the grade difference, but
Yeah.
more we can get, the better.
If we're proposing a fee in lieu of the saplings, we can easily supplement that with buffer plantings to help screen whatever neighbor is. I mean, we're more than comfortable doing that.
Right.
Steve, I'll defer to you if you want to ready to move on, and which one you want to move on to.
Yeah, I think we move on to 15. Just to touch on that. So you have lighting around all the parking lots, correct?
That's correct.
You've touched on the fact that it may be a 24-hour facility, so the lighting would be on 24 hours.
That's correct.
We had an applicant propose a system that allowed the lighting to be reduced to a percentage of the full lighting, unless basically on a motion sensor system. So if there was no activity outside, it was sort of dim the outside lights until there was activity. Would something like that be a possibility on this site? Even if it was just the parking, the car parking next to Lutheran, essentially on the Lutheran home side, the truck parking is really away from everybody.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So obviously the concern here would be these residents. And again, there's safety and security requirements, which require the lights to be on at a certain level, 24 hours for safety and security. But no, we could look at after hours, dimming some of these lights to shield these neighbors, and the system, which you mentioned, Steve, was something we could look into. But I would say that given the industrial use to the north, and that's why we designed this and laid this out, we put the truck court on the top part of the site to be away from all this. I would say it was less necessary up here, and we could certainly look into some reduced lighting package after hours on the parking.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, I don't remember what the height of your fixtures are, but maybe that should be looked at also on that near the Lutheran community side, because we already talked about the parking lot being higher than the Lutheran community level. And if you put 20-foot or 25-foot poles up there, those lights will tower over the Lutheran community.
That is, we can look into that as well. I believe that for the most part, they're wall packs, downward wall packs, but we can look into if there's any options there. For everything will be shielded, it'll be compliant. We're not asking for any zoning relief, but we are aware of just the nuisance factor that we're obviously trying to mitigate.
Okay, if we move ahead to number 16, this is usually a quick discussion. Is the planning commission interested in a tot lot on the site? We have the recreation requirement. There's a fee in lieu of built into the recreation requirement. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on that.
I see no reason
would be
for
appropriate.
a recreation area.
I mean, I think we talked about trails coming up, and maybe that's a piece of what we could look at as well.
Yeah, that's actually number 17 is the trail linkage that's in the comprehensive plan, which generally talks about trail linkage from essentially the borough, the library, the park in the borough, which is next to Lutheran, on the other side of the Lutheran community, ultimately back to East Branch, Perkiomen Creek, where we have another trail corridor intended along the creek. The comprehensive plan shows it along the rear of, let's say the rear of the North American Draeger property. But if you're interested in establishing a link, it might even make sense that it's brought out to Quarry Road,
Right.
and would extend along the right of way of Quarry Road. And those are some options that are possible.
Where's sidewalk end on State Road coming out of Telford?
Where is sidewalk on State Road coming to Telford?
Pretty much right at the end of the park.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't go past the entrance of the Lutheran home.
Okay.
It wraps through the Lutheran home, but it terminates right at that entrance.
Okay.
And I think the trail linkage was shown to come in sort of the rear corner of the North American Drager property, which would sort of be like the back of the park in Telford.
Okay.
But that's, that was an approximate location on the plan. The intent was sort of from that Telford area down to East Branch, Perkiomen Creek. I think the exact path has, options. Could be done different ways.
Justin, are you guys amenable to doing some type of paved pathway?
Sure. So during my discussion with Steve, obviously the trail did come up. It does traverse the property. Steve and I talked about exactly what he said here, just options for connecting or whatever the intent of the connection was, incorporating that into our plan. And yes, we are, amenable to that path. We just want to know a little bit more detail on what the Planning Commission and Park and Rec is, I guess, looking for in this sense.
Yeah, I was just thinking that same thing. This might make sense to refer to Park and Rec Board to get some input from them of what they would foresee as the best, best paths or the most easiest route to get done in the long term.
Preferably
idea I
not through the spray irrigation field.
Yeah, we could we have the opportunity to run it along the property line. On the plan, it shows it coming up and then kind of serpentining all the way through the property to nowhere. At this point, I know it's just a trail connection. So there's something more immediate and beneficial that we could incorporate into our plan. I think we're here to discuss.
Steve,
Yeah, I think Steve's right that we need be nice to have input from the Park and Rec.
I was thinking if they're already clearing part of that wooded area from State back along the PP&L property, maybe you could put the trail coming from State back along that eastern side of the peninsula and then down the property line to Quarry at that point.
That could be a good option, yeah.
That way you're not increasing traffic around the Lutheran home either, foot traffic around the Lutheran home.
Yeah, that's something we can incorporate. So, we're open to that discussion.
All right. Good. So I'll have to get you coordinated with Park and Rec.
Good there.
Okay. They're already talking to Telford Borough Authority, so that's in the works. We forwarded the plan to the servicing fire company. I don't know that Greg has received comments. I'll check with him because I know he's not monitoring this tonight. And if we have something, I'll forward it along to you. Sanitary sewer, they've talked to Telford also about that. Ultimately, we'll need planning module or exemption depending on what DEP is going to want for this. You need your conservation district NPDS permits. That's standard. We'll need to talk about that. And I think the rest of my items are just basic. So I think we touched on the quote unquote planning issues of the plan. I don't think we need to go through the engineering drafting details. There's nothing in there, Justin, is there, that you wanted input on?
No, there would be, similar to the previous application, just some general waivers, obviously for plan scale, given the size of this property. We was looking for, obviously we have more detail on our plan, so we'll be looking at a better scale than 1=50, which is a waiver. And then just some housekeeping items, I'll call it, just with the surveying areas within 100 feet of your property, we'll be asking for a waiver from that as well too. We have plenty of detail in our plan and an aerial to support it. So just to give
Well,
a preview of just some of the light waivers.
You touched on a topic that had a lot of discussion in the recently. So you need to at least show aerial and LiDAR within 100 feet of the site.
I will do that.
Leave it at that. Yeah, you could ask for your waiver for the actual field survey, but at least have the aerial and LiDAR information.
Yes, we will do that. That is not a problem. And that's it. I mean, I think we're going to be revising, resubmitting plans, and just a couple things that we talked about tonight would be waivers to the extent that they're fee in lieu of as well. So, Ed, I don't know if you have anything more to add to it.
No, I think we got to figure out we need to, between now and presumably when we come back, we will try to pin down with a lot more certainty what the extent of the obligation is for planning and how we work all those things out based on the comments tonight, swapping out spaplings for bigger stuff and the like. So we'll get through all that, and it sounds like Justin's going to be resubmitting the plan. Steve will be commenting on that revised plan, and hopefully and I think in the interim, at least I understand from Corey and Justin, that McMahon should have its report on a more global basis back sometime early in the new year as well. So hopefully that'll all coalesce when we come and visit you guys again the next time. So
yeah, I will throw out, I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but this took an inordinate amount of time on our last application. If we settle on the improvements, at least in a sketch fashion for State and Quarry Road, we need to at least get them to PennDOT, at least on a scoping meeting level, and get their feedback, so we know that PennDOT isn't going to require more or change, what the concept is.
Yeah, that's our plan, Steve. Our plan was to respond to McMahon's review letter and at the same time submit a scoping application to PennDOT so that the intent would be to meet with PennDOT, obviously with the township president as well, before we come back to you guys.
Okay, good. Yeah, that got somewhere lost in the mix on the last plan, and it just took forever to get some PennDOT feedback. So the sooner you could do that, the better.
we'll get it.
One other question I had was, did you guys have any comment on Bucks County or any thoughts on Bucks County's comment about energy conservation and some of the things they proposed there?
No.
That was number 6 in their review letter.
They mentioned the white roof.
Yeah.
We will have a white roof. No, I mean, I think energy
That's
conservation.
Yep.
No solar panels on your white roof?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So are we just going to table this until you come back?
Yep.
All right.
We'd love for you to approve it or make a recommendation so we don't have to come back, but I think that's
I
probably
think it's a little premature.
really okay.
Never hurts to ask.
No, I don't blame you.
No, that's fine. All right, now we understand. So
Yeah, there's a lot outstanding here. So
I think we're pretty far along, but we agree. So we'll get it cleaned up and we'll get back in and hopefully see you soon, whatever that means.
okay.
Okay.
Good enough. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. So next on our agenda is select properties with Lawn Avenue. So we have to take the lead on that.
Yeah, this is Brian Folk from C2C Design. I'm here tonight with Brian Grant.
He's the representative of the applicant.
All right, give me a second here. I got paper scattered all over the place on the last one.
No problem.
All right, so which one are we talking about first?
I believe Lawn Avenue was next.
Okay,
Yeah, the larger development,
82 lot.
correct.
All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, this is a conglomeration of I think 6 different properties that the applicant either owns or is equitable owner in. That totals about 63 acres. Of the 63 acres, 59 are located in the Village Residential District, and about 4 of it are in the RA, Residential Ag District. The property has frontage on Lawn Avenue to the south, Mountain View Road to the north, and there's a small piece of frontage out on Forest Road on the west side for the portion of the property that is in that residential ag that I spoke about. We're proposing a B1 single family use, 82 new lots. Again, access on the road would be, actually your plan's kind of upside down a little bit, but that's fine. And on your plan, Mountain View's on the bottom of the plan, and Lawn Avenue's to the top. So just so everybody's on the same page as I'm discussing that. We have access, one access out to Mountain View Road. There are 3 accesses being shown on this sketch to Lawn Avenue. Since this sketch was submitted, we had some conversation, and that middle access road would most likely be eliminated.
So, hang on a second. So the plan on the screen, is that a negative?
Looks like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a reverse image, yeah.
You tested me looking at that plan, trying to describe it.
I was confused too.
Hey, Brian, before we go any, it's Brian, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. So I saw the emails with Greg today about submitting a revised plan this evening.
Yeah, we weren't really trying to submit a revised plan. We just had an updated exhibit that took a little bit
So
of.
you have exhibits.
Yeah, a little bit of what was suggested in these letters that we could show how we were addressing them and where we were going. We weren't,
Okay.
and we just provided it to him because I didn't know how this worked, if he provided it on the screen for us or we shared. So I just wanted to make sure he had it if we needed it that way. I apologize for the confusion there.
There's no revisions on the plans.
No, we're not submitting revised plans at this point. We're not asking for any reviews.
You just have exhibits.
Yes, they were just
Okay. All right. That's fine.
exhibits to show what we're talking about.
Okay, good. All right,
So-
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. So it's 82 single family lots. I talked about the access points. Open space requirement is 40% open space in the VR district. There's no open space required in the RA district. I'll touch a little bit on some of the confusion on the open space. On the plan that was submitted, it wasn't really clearly shown what's being proposed on the 2 larger parcels up on Mountain View Road, the Young Tract and the Fisher Tract. We'll start with the Fisher Tract, which is the one in your lower right on your plan. The agreement that the applicant has with that property owner is to acquire 5 acres from them and subdivide off the existing parcel. So the existing house will remain on, it's about a 10-acre tract for discussion purposes. 5 acres would remain with them, and they would acquire 5 acres for the development. Those 5 acres would then be applied to the open space, minus we would need to put in a pump station lot up there along Mountain View Road, as we will be providing public water and sewer. And sewer and water are going to have to come from down Mountain View Road on the other side of 309. So we would collect it via gravity here to a pump station and then pump it across 309 to the nearest sewer, existing sewer main. The Fisher piece, excuse me, the Young tract next to that, there's been some discussion with them that they're willing to grant us an open space easement for everything on their land that is undeveloped. So we are going to create an easement on their parcel and use all of their lot minus the area in and around their house that is developed currently as open space as well, to meet the open space towards the open space requirements.
Not to jump in and interrupt you, Brian, but
No, that's fine.
I think we need to look at that closer of whether an easement over private property will meet our open space requirement to some level. Are they going to permit public access to that easement? I'm not sure how that functionally would work. So that may be something the developer in the township needs to figure out if that
Absolutely,
will,
agreed.
will meet the intent of the open space requirement.
Agreed. We realize we're going to have a discussion on the language in there and make sure that the intent would be that, yes, there would be allowed public access and it would be maintained by the HOA. But that's something that we'll have to work through the language in there and make sure it meets the satisfaction of the township.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out.
Yep, no, we understand that. We also are providing access points along the roadway between Lawn Avenue and Mountain View Road. There will be a proposed trail system. That trail will connect at those open space connections to help break up the roadway to meet the block length requirements. Trail system wasn't exactly shown in detail on this sketch. We didn't get that far at this point, but we are going to propose some sort of a trail. Obviously, we can. There we go.
There you go.
There's a little better.
Thank you.
Obviously, the trail system will have to be coordinated with the comprehensive plan. And that's one thing we're looking for tonight is if there's any suggestions on where you'd like to see that trail connect and run. Obviously, we're going to try to run it through the open space and make some connections. Cartway width is a 26-foot wide cartway with parking on one side, 46-foot wide right of way. That's right out of your ordinance as one of the options for the B1 use. So we would have parking on one side. Parking, we're going to have a 2-car garage and a driveway width for 2 cars parked in the driveway. So each lot will have 4 off-street spaces, and then we will have an additional one side of the road for on-street parking. So that's how we're proposing to meet the parking requirements for two spaces plus 1 overflow space per lot. We're actually going to be providing 4 on lot plus the on street. I guess that's kind of the general overview. I don't think there's any other specific items that we need to discuss as far as the plan goes. We do have some items that maybe to clarify a little bit in the letter, but I guess I can turn it back to you guys and see if there's anything you want to discuss first, and then we can go through the letter.
Yeah, I don't need to open any discussion, aside from the letter for now. Unless anybody else has anything they want to ask Brian before we run through the review.
Yeah, this is John Swarta. The access on Mountain View Road, is that a emergency access or full access?
I think our intent is that would be used as an emergency access, given the width of Mountain View Road. Obviously, we'd have to go through and do a traffic study and do the traffic analysis at this point, but I think that's what our preference is and the intent coming into this plan.
I don't see how it could only be an emergency access, because at that rate you're essentially creating several a super long cul-de-sac street if you're gonna restrict access out to Mountain View Road. There is no other access to that long stretch of road.
Understood. We wanted to open that up for discussion and see what the township's thought were on that. Like I said, obviously we got to do the traffic analysis and see what kind of improvements need to be done. Obviously, Mountain View Road is not very wide in its existing condition, and there will be need for some improvements out there if it becomes a full access. So I guess if I'm hearing right, the township prefers that to be a full access at this point.
Well, that's my comment. I don't know that the township said that.
I would agree with Steve on that. I mean, if you do restrict that, then you're essentially creating a very long cul-de-sac, which wouldn't come close to meeting our ordinance.
And that's an issue we've had repeatedly in other projects. So yeah, I think that has to be a full access at that point.
Okay, understood. All right, with that, I guess we can maybe just jump through the letter pretty quick. Don't have a lot of specific questions, and this is just a sketch, so a lot of these are will comply and we'll make adjustments to the plan. So please stop me if there's anything that appear to be a bigger issue than I'm thinking they are. The first one, yes, a lot of the lots are 12,000 square feet. We did not get all the lot sizes shown on there, but that is the intent. They're all lined up there to meet those minimum lot areas at 12,000 square feet per the ordinance.
What's the approximate size of the houses that you're going to be putting on properties?
I don't know, Brian, do you?
I would estimate just somewhere in the range of 2,500 square feet.
Okay, it's like a mid-size house.
Correct. Preliminary, we don't have an end user and an end builder yet with product that's been nailed down, but just as a preliminary estimate, I think the footprint of what we propose is probably right around that square footage.
Well, now that you mentioned that, Brian, let's touch on that, because we've had these discussions a lot in East Rock Hill, but you haven't been over here in West Rock Hill. So you as Select Properties are not proposing to be the developer of the houses. Is that correct?
We'd be the developer of the project, and then what we typically do is we partner with the national builders to build the homes.
The home. Okay, so the homes themselves would be done by a different developer, well, however you want to say it, a different home builder.
They'd be the home builder, we'd be the developer.
Right. Okay. I just wanted the Plan Commission to understand that.
Yeah, there are comments as we get through the letter talking about the architecturals and the setbacks and things like that we have to go through and try to find somebody that has the right product to meet all those requirements. So we are aware of them, and thank you for reiterating them in your letter. It makes it very clear for us to make sure we can get them addressed as we're looking for end users and an end product there.
Brian, just to clarify, as the developer, basically the builder would be working for you and you'd be selling the homes?
No, to clarify, and we work this way with in a number of municipalities across probably 3 or 4 counties. We act as the developer. Many times we stay in the deal and we sell approved and improved lots to a national builder. And then the builder comes in, purchases lots, and builds on those lots. And then he's out selling those to a third party. We're working with Steve in the adjacent East Rock Hill Township on a project, in that very same fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon. We've done that with a lot of different developers. I just wanted the township to understand that you weren't necessarily going to, in the home business on this project.
As it relates to the developers of process, we have to make sure that we comply with the architectural requirements that are in the ordinance and demonstrate, compliance with that.
I'm going through the letter back to number 2. The Young property is the one property we talked about with the open space. and that was touched on already. Lot 82 is the McLean. That's the one over off of Forest on the left-hand side of this plan. We were proposing to put in a lane lot, as it's referred to in your ordinance, and reduce the size of that down to I think it's a 1.2 acre lot. Apparently, reading through the ordinance, the lane lot would not be permitted because there's a proposed new street. We had kind of interpreted that there was no new street in that zoning district, but I understand the clarification. If we can get a clarification and confirm that, then I guess that lane lot would have to go away.
Yeah, we look at it as that's part of the development, and there's a new street in this development, so
No
lane
lane
lots
lot.
are not permitted.
What's the need for the McLean lot?
I don't know that there's a specific need as part of this development. I don't know, Brian, if McLean was part of something else. I know you have a lot of history of these pieces. But if there's no access over there and there's no additional lane lot, I don't know what the need for this as part of this development would be.
The McLean property is between the Young property and the existing Select properties on Lawn Avenue. So what you're doing is and that property was odd shaped. It was literally like a flag lot, and you're taking the back part of the flag as part of the development, and the front part of the flag, or the pole part of the flag, is what you're showing as the McLean home and the flag lot.
But is that not also property that then is directly across Forest Road from property owned by Select as well? You get 10 acres that runs up the back of the open space on the west side of the Zimba property.
I'm not sure if they align, but we do I'm not sure what entity, but we do own property across Forest Road.
The Zimba property here is in the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, understood. I know right where it's at. I'm just saying, if you come, the last property at the Zimba where that blue house is owned by, I believe, Select Properties or some entity related to it. I just wonder if there's any correlation between this property coming across Forest Road and hooking up with that property.
Not as currently proposed.
Yeah, I think they're about right across from each other, but I don't think there's any other connection that I'm seeing here.
Right.
Yeah, there's no proposed connections as part of this development at this time.
Right, at this time. Gotcha.
All right, continuing down through, number 3 talks about that the lane lot, which we already touched on. Number 4 is open space E, which is the Fisher and Young parcels that I already kind of discussed earlier on. So if there's any questions on that. Number 5 is the Kochi property, which is a parcel that's located, the road that's parallel to Lawn Avenue has an existing home, has a driveway that currently comes out to Lawn Avenue through an access easement through the applicant's property. We would be proposing to provide them access to the new road and eliminate that access easement out to Lawn Avenue. The comment is just to make sure we're meeting not creating a non-conforming lot, meet all the setbacks for all the existing buildings and impervious coverage and lot areas and widths and everything. And we understand we need to provide that detail.
Am I correct that the Kochi property is a landlocked piece of property now, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And that's
Correct.
you're not taking that area, that you're not using that property as part of your development. You're just providing them a new access to a new street.
That's correct. And providing frontage for them that they don't have currently.
Right.
So I guess we're kind of taking a non-conforming lot and trying to make it conform, I guess.
Right. But beyond doing that, it's not being included in the area for the development or any of the calculations.
No, it's just an adjoining parcel as part of the development.
Are they
Um,
aware?
I don't know the answer, Brian. Have you had conversations with the coaches at all?
I mean, we've talked to the coaches off and on through the years actually to acquire their property. Yeah, they haven't seen this plan yet. No.
Okay.
Certainly, as part of our preliminary submission, we're required to notify adjacent homeowners. They'd be one of the people that would be notified.
Number 6, open space. This talks about all the things that can and cannot be included in the open space, stormwater basins, right of ways, setbacks, etc. And we'll get that all detailed and outlined on here. We didn't get into that specifics on this sketch, but we do understand those requirements, and we'll comply with those ordinance requirements for and to meet the 40%.
Okay. I think just to be clear for everybody, a stormwater basin could be in an area, generally in the open space area, but it can't be included in the area calculation. So it's not that you can't have a basin back in an open space field. You just can't use the area of the basin towards the minimum calculation. In case somebody thought
Understood.
they had to be on a separate lot or something, they don't have to be on a separate lot.
Yeah, typically we would provide an open space plan showing shading of what we're counting as open space to meet the requirements. And obviously we got to do those stormwater calculations to really know what the size of those facilities are and how many they are. We have
Right.
some conceptually laid out, but again, it's just a concept at this point. Continuing down, discussing things in the VR district. Open space, I guess that's one of the things we're looking for some feedback on tonight is what would you like to see the uses in this open space? We're going to propose a walking trail. Are there any other uses that the township would like to see? Other than that, we're going to keep it, they're going to be owned and maintained by the HOA and just be kept in a natural condition, other than the trails. So,
Are there any wetlands on the property?
no, there's one stream up on the Fisher parcel that would be part of the open space. That's the only part where there is any wetlands located on the site. Or environmentally sensitive areas, I should say. It's not really a wetland.
Right.
Obviously, we're not at that comment yet, but the rec fee, we would be hopefully proposing a fee in lieu of, unless the township would want to see rec facilities located here. Any pocket parks or fields or any of that such, we would obviously prefer to do the fee in lieu of, which all ties into the open space.
Getting back to 7A, I think in past projects we've gone with walking paths as the recreation feature. I don't think we've done much more than that. Steve, can you back me up on that?
I mean, as far as overall open space improvements, no. I mean, the recreation requirements are separate and distinct based on the number of lots. But yeah, we really haven't done anything more than walking trails or natural areas.
Okay. B talks about it being owned by the HOA, and we would provide HOA documents and such. C talks about the block length. I had mentioned that those open space gaps, we would provide the trail connections to allow that block length to be extended to the 800 feet between those access points.
Yeah, how does this all work? The lane going from lawn to Mountain View, there's no breaks in that, and is that what the catch is in the ordinance?
Well, I mean, the ordinance catch only allows you to go from 500 to 800. Doesn't provide for beyond 800 feet.
So you're saying that it's not 800 between access points for the path. It's a total of 800 feet without an intersection.
That's the way I read it. I could read it again, but I mean, quite frankly, this is the first development under these provisions. So
Okay.
we have not implemented it before. And let me just piggyback on, I put a comment, I think it was at the end of my letter, but I think it's important in this development and your other development in that, we suggested that you submit your sketch plan to the Bucks County Planning Commission, because the county was the driving, I don't say the driving force, but they're the ones that came up with the outline of the village, the village districts and the design standards. And I think it would be beneficial for the township to get their input on some of these things, especially how they interpret some of those sections.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, we don't have a problem making that submission and getting their input.
I mean, they may look at it a little bit different than I'm reading it, and I think the township would take that into consideration if since they were the ones behind some of these standards.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, in this case, if it gets interpreted that way, we probably need some sort of zoning relief to provide that second access up to Mountain View Road. We don't have the width to put any other intersections really in there. So unless we did potentially put the intersection out to Forest, that would be probably the only location. But so that's certainly something we'll have to get a clarification on. We'll wait for the county's comments and go from there.
What's the current length of the roadway from the one parallel to Lawn out to Mountain View?
The one
1900 feet, give or take.
Okay.
All right, D talks about the minimum street width, parking on both sides, 34 feet and 54. We're proposing parking on one side of 26 feet and 46-foot wide right of way. That's taken right out of your ordinance. That's that zoning section. I think it's C24 or C4 is where that comes from. The one. So I guess we're looking for a clarification. You're okay with the one parking on one side here, since we are providing 4 parking spaces on one lot.
And there's no perpendicular parking areas.
No, there's no off-street parking areas off the lots, just the driveways
Okay.
for each lot. E's talking about the parking space requirement. F and G are both about the architectural design standards for the village house, and we'll obviously have to comply with that and make sure we meet those requirements and get that detailed out and noted on the plans. 8, site capacity calculations, preliminary resource protection calculations. We did provide them based on the site survey that we have done. And obviously we'll have to detail them out and keep track on them and provide all the detailed calculations as we proceed on that. And those will be will comply items. Number 9, phase 1 environmental. I believe I'll turn that over to you, Brian, with what's your history on the phase 1 environmental, if there was one complete or you're in the process of getting one.
Yeah, I have to dig into our files and see if we did one previously. We typically, do a phase 1 from an overall project standpoint.
So we will comply and provide that if we have one. If not, we'll get one. Obviously, 10 is stormwater management. We understand it'll probably be an individual NPDS. There is split drainage areas, which always make it a little more little more challenging for the stormwater design, but we will provide and meet all the requirements for your stormwater and NPDS requirements. We'll do specific infiltration testing out there once we have a preliminary concept engineering done. I guess a question for you, Steve, is do you guys want to be on site when we do that testing, or is that something?
We like to be advised of it, and we'll decide if we want
Okay.
to have time to come out when you're doing it.
Yep. Number 11, we'll certainly analyze that existing culvert crossing at Lawn Avenue. Make sure that we're not doing any increase at that location.
Steve, quick on number 11.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that could be looked at, like from a standpoint of moving that crossing, where it crosses Lawn Avenue?
It's a possibility. I was just gonna clarify on this, that this is a known point of some issues in the township. That's why I called it out separately from just the regular stormwater comment. So just be advised that we want it's a critical thing that we need to look at in the township. And as the planning commission member just said, it may be, even if it's relocated, it might be better for everyone involved. But
yeah, we'll take special care and look at that and do separate analysis specifically of that area if that's a known problem. We have no problem doing that, and it's good to know. That's why we do these sketches, so we can find that stuff out and really tailor our stormwater management to help address a problem.
Thanks, Steve.
12 and 13 are sewer and water. We have had preliminary discussions with I think all three authorities in the area, Percy, Telford, and I forget the third one. And things are progressing along those lines. Like I said, we're going to have to run a line down Mountain View Road, across 309, put in a pump station. So we have some work to do on the sewer and water end. But those discussions have occurred and have started, and will continue, and we'll keep you guys abreast and make sure we meet all these requirements.
Has any one of those authorities talked about the need for like a water tower to be added to provide sufficient pressure for this new development?
No.
No, not at this time. Again, detailed plans haven't been submitted to them with elevations and everything, but in all our discussions and their familiarity with the site, has not been brought up as a concern.
Okay, thank you.
14, obviously we got to do the traffic study. Traffic consultant got to get on board, coordinate with PennDOT and so forth. We'll certainly keep you involved in that and be part of any scoping applications. Number 15, that's a will comply item regarding the modification of the traffic signal permit. If it's necessary, obviously PennDOT will be involved in that as well. Uh, 16, we kind of already touched on Mountain View Road. The need for that to be a full access and not just an emergency access. That seemed to be the recommendation that I was hearing. We'll certainly account for that in our traffic analysis and improvement recommendations from that study, and we'll coordinate with your office and the township traffic engineer on those improvements.
That section of Mountain View Road between your proposed development and Forest Road, a lot of that goes through wetlands. I don't know whether you need to do an environmental study along with a PennDOT study for any environmental impact that may be as a result of widening Mountain View Road.
Yeah, we'll have to, if the result is to provide widening, we'll have to then obviously do survey and provide right-of-way analysis to see where the right-of-way is, what widening we can do. And then if there are any signs of streams or wetlands in there, we'll also have a wetland scientists go out and confirm or whether there are wetlands and what the impacts would be. And then if there are impacts, we'd have to get those permitted through DEP through the 105 process. So yes, there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done there and coordination to happen.
Are you looking to do sidewalk on lawn?
Right now, we're just proposing sidewalk internally on both roads. We did not necessarily propose any sidewalk on Mountain View or on Lawn. Again, we're looking for feedback from the township tonight if that's something you'd like to see. And again, we could.
Well,
When we get to 19, we'll talk about sidewalk on Lawn Avenue.
right, there you go.
All right, we're almost there. 17. Obviously, we got to provide all the street design standards to meet the subdivision land development ordinance. 18 is traffic calming. I think we would, if we do get a positive recommendation on this layout for block length or whatever relief would be needed for that. We would propose to put some speed tables along there to kind of slow things down in this residential area. So I think we would acknowledge that some measures are needed, and those are the methodology we would prefer is a speed table. Then 19, here we are, we're at the trails and the coordination with the comprehensive plan. So I'll just, I guess, turn it over to you guys to give me your feedback on where you'd like the trails to connect, where and sidewalks to be shown.
Yeah, so this particular trail is shown on the comp plan, extending up from Lawn Avenue on the other side of the ramp. So down, essentially down from the outpatient center, that area, coming north on, we'll call it north on Lawn Avenue, to maybe just a little bit past the frontage of this property, and then it would cross Lawn Avenue and head towards Ridge Valley Road and ultimately over to the park. So it would seem appropriate that a path and/or sidewalk along Lawn Avenue would be right in the alignment of that proposed trail.
Would you prefer it to be like a macadam walking trail out of the right of way? We have open space in that area, or would you prefer the sidewalk, right up adjacent with the grass strip or whatever your ordinance requirements are for the improvements with curb and sidewalk?
So you're one lot in from, or no, sorry, you're one lot in from Ridge Road.
Correct.
Yes, the Wawa is adjacent, I believe.
Right. And you're working to get that to develop that as well. I mean, if that's the case, I'd want to see, curb and sidewalk. If it's going to get developed all the way out to Ridge Road.
Yeah, we don't have any agreements on that parcel. We have no control of that. If there's proposed development there, we'd love to get a copy of those plans so we can coordinate those improvements.
Right.
Well, there's a 10-year-old approved plan for a Wawa on the corner, and they still own the property. But
right. And how about to the north, or would that be north? Well, toward Forest. On the other side of your development here. Who's next? Is that Unruh's property?
Yeah, that's on Reels right there.
Yeah.
That's RA there, I think, right? So the RA start.
now there's a little piece of VR that bumps up further along Lawn Avenue. And I don't know who the property owner there is.
Well, either way, I think it'd be appropriate to have a sidewalk on your frontage here.
Yeah, I would think so too, considering this is supposed to be our village, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
Anywhere there's supposed to be sidewalk, isn't it supposed to be in the village?
Okay. All right, 20. Obviously, we'll notify the property owners when we make our preliminary plan submission. 21 will have a narrative describing what's going on. 22, again, we talked about the rec requirements, and we would prefer to provide a fee in lieu of, unless that's something you would want to see some sort of pocket parks or basketball courts or tennis courts in this open space in this area. But
Steve, is the recreation facility in addition to the open space?
No, I believe the recreation area can be within the open space. I'd have to verify that, but
It's a usage of open space.
yeah, it's a permitted usage, but
Yes.
you have to have X amount of square footage that can be, you can't say the side of a hill is your, a steep slope is your recreation area. It had to be usable area.
Sledding.
Right. But, yeah, we talked about a little bit earlier, we have specific improvement requirements based on the number of lots, and that's what it works out to be for 82 lots, 2 tot lots, a playground, and 1 basketball and or tennis court. So that could all be required to be installed, or you could want some of that and potentially a fee for some of it. And I don't know that you're in a position tonight to make that kind of decision, but it's.
What's the target demographic with a development like this?
Yeah, I think it's still a little early to say that
Yeah.
until we really work with some of the nationals. I think it'd be a wider range.
Yeah.
Now,
you need tot lots and bocce ball.
and I guess this could be another, question for the Park and Rec Board.
Yeah.
You have a little bit different here because it's mostly homeowners association, so it's not something that the township is going to take care of per se. So, it might have a little bit different aspect to it. So if you put a tot lot here, it's not necessarily open for public use. Let's put it that way. So
Right.
it would be for the use of the community more so than open to the public.
What value added does a homeowners association provide in a development like this?
To the township or to the homeowners?
Both.
To the township, it's a whole lot of open space that we don't have to take care of. Depending what we ultimately do with the streets. I'm not sure if we talked about that, public or private streets.
yeah, we did skip over that, and that was a question. We obviously prefer to dedicate it, but if the township wants it to be a private road, that's something we can design it that way. And I mean, design is essentially the same, but we can note it that way and it'd be part of the HOA.
Yeah. Again, I don't know that that's a question that could be answered tonight, but certainly we're aware of it now and take it under consideration.
Understood.
It's less road maintenance and.
Yeah,
Maintenance
it's less
for the
maintenance for the township, and sometimes there's the benefit of an HOA in that, you get unified maintenance of things. Now, this isn't a townhouse development, but let's use a townhouse as another example. In a townhouse development, usually the HOA maintains all the lawns, everything in the yard areas, and you get a nice uniform look to it rather than having, 25 or 50 individual townhouse owners maintaining their own lawns. In a single family development, it's a little bit different than that. Usually the homeowners take care of their own properties, but I've seen developments where they don't have to. But it's a maintenance and an overall, site appearance issue with the HOAs.
There's different levels of HOAs. Sometimes they control, the colors of your shutters and the types of materials you can put on, and others are a little more lax and not quite as specific. But so it all depends on the end user here and who's going to end up building these houses and what kind of product they want to put out there.
Yeah, I understand from in townhouses where uniformity is somewhat enforced by HOAs, but in separate houses like this, I think an HOA could be more like a PITA than a benefit to the homeowners.
Yeah, typically in these situations, it's almost required by the townships that we have them because they don't want the open space. And in this case, you don't want the road. There's no other option but a homeowners association to maintain and deal with them. So I don't necessarily disagree from a homeowner's perspective. Sometimes they don't really, it's not really a plus usually to have that HOA fee, but.
All right, and in this development where there might be multiple stormwater basins, that's, you know, a big expense that the township would have to take on if they owned all that, those improvements.
Thank you.
Next comment, 23 is.
I'm sorry, one minute.
Yep.
Steve, if there's open space that's through an easement, is that something the township would have to maintain, or would the property owner maintain that? How would that work?
That would still.
Well, that's where we started. I'm not even sure that that's a workable idea. So that needs more investigation, how that works.
Gotcha.
All right, the next one is the landscape
before you-
plan. Go
Before we
ahead.
move on, so with the rec land, do we want to defer to the park and rec on this?
I think that their input would be beneficial, but I think, you know, in this case, we need to make them aware that, you know, it's potentially it's HOA property and not, you know, not a public improvement. But I'm sure they could look at it from, you know, holistically with the township. Do they think it's beneficial to have pocket parks, or would they rather you know, keep everything all combined into James Park,
Right.
at least from a concept standpoint?
I suppose they could also break out a recreational area that the township would control. I just don't know how you do it without additional parking.
Right.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to have a little parking lot if the township took one section of open space as a public park and the rest HOA. Is that what you're referring to, Alex?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
if they wanted a playground in that area just because of all the new homes.
Yeah, you wouldn't need a little parking lot then.
Yep.
Okay.
Currently, parking on one side wouldn't give you enough on-street parking to do that.
Landscape plans, we'll provide detailed landscape plans. Are there any specific areas of concern, I guess, that the township has that wants to see? I mean, it's mostly residential against residential in this application. So, I mean, obviously, whatever the ordinance requires, we'll provide. But I just wanted to ask: is there any specific areas that we want to pay special attention to?
Well, if you were paying attention to prior applications, we have a vast number of landscape requirements for
Understood.
buffer trees, afforestation, stormwater management trees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we just need to know that you're meeting all the requirements.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a particular place that needs to be buffered on this project more than anything else. It's, you know, like you said, it's single family up against single family properties.
Maybe Cochise could use some buffering.
Yeah, they're the one people ending up in the dead middle of the development, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't there
Made a
two
note.
houses back there?
What was that, John?
Aren't there two houses back there on off of Lawn Avenue? There's like two driveways right next to each other on Lawn Avenue. So I thought there were two houses back
Yeah,
there.
one of them is located on the development property.
Okay.
So that one will be removed.
Is it
The
a
house will be
historic?
removed?
Pardon me?
You're saying the house will be removed?
Yes, that house will be removed. It's right now shown in the middle of lots like 34 and 35, I believe it is, or 34. And
That was the original Navarro home then.
Correct.
It's not a historic building, is it?
I don't think so.
Nah, I don't think so either.
24 ENS and MPDS, obviously we got to go through that. And then 25 is make sure we meet all your SALDO requirements going through. Um, so that's all the comments in the letter. So obviously we're not looking for anything tonight. It's just a sketch plan. We'll take your comments back, do a little more research on some of the zoning items, block length, the lane lot. We'll do a little work on that open space issue, get into that agreement, and once we get that all that put together, we'll put a preliminary plan together and get a submission in.
Could we circle back to one item that I think we mentioned, but I don't know if the planning commission gave any input on, and that was the parking on one side or parking on both sides of the street. I think what you said you're proposing parking on one side of the street.
That's correct.
You feel that'll meet all the parking standards with the on-lot parking?
Yeah, I guess just to confirm, I mean, we're saying two-car garages, so that's 2 spaces, and then driveway width of 20 feet to provide 2 spaces side by side.
By definition in the ordinance, you can't count the first garage space towards your parking standard. So 2-car garage only counts for 1 garage space.
2-car garage and the driveway.
Okay, well,
So-
yeah, you could count the
So you're
driveway
getting
space.
You're getting 2 spaces out of those 4 is what you're saying. The
No,
garage-
you get 1 out of the garage and 2 in the driveway.
Okay,
I'm saying our ordinance anticipates that you're going to pack your garage with stuff and not use it for a car.
understood. So that would be the 3 that's required, 2 per lot and then 1 spillover. So that would be 3 off-street parking.
And then as we touched on before, there's that second catch of actually putting a garage on the front of these units in the village area has its own standards that have to be met.
Correct, the 10-foot setback and whatnot, yes, which,
No more than 25% of the fascia of the house and things. So
And Steve, what was that thing we ran into down there at Caroline Place down there, where the right of way, between the sidewalk and the right of way, and then the depth of the driveway wasn't deep enough to have a car parked there and not be in the right of way? Wasn't that something along those lines? Like, how deep are these driveways on these things?
are you talking about the THB project?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think had shorter front yards.
How big are these front yards in this thing?
yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
Because till you get the right of way and then the sidewalk, right? Or the sidewalk's in the right of way, but
Front yard is 20 feet minimum, and that's usually a typical parking space, 10 by 20. And that's from the right of way. So that's from
outside
behind.
of the right of way.
Correct.
So that's been a concern in the past. I guess that's a good point of, is the driveway adequate to park vehicles in? I guess one other thing we've talked about on other projects, we really haven't updated the ordinance to this, though. The ordinance is set up for street trees between the curb and sidewalk, but we've been trying to transition away from that because we've had so many problems with the, trees and sidewalks and things. So, something we'll have to look into a little more detail as you move forward, but keep that in mind that we're trying to transition away from that concept.
No problem.
I know one of the difficulties we've had, and Brian, we talked about this in East Rock Hill, is, PPL likes to run right behind the sidewalk in the lot. And so that goofs up the ability to put the tree on the backside of the sidewalk. Whether or not you could convince PPL to run in between the curb and sidewalk is the next hurdle. Did you ever get that answer, Brian?
We do have a preliminary design for McLennan. Yeah, I have to revisit exactly where that's at, but yeah, you have UGI and PP&L, and they don't play nice together, and so you have separate trenching for those 2 utilities as well.
Yeah,
Are you
that's something to
assuming these
keep.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say that's something to keep in mind as it moves forward.
You
And one
mentioned
last thing, Steve, did I see a 12-foot garage door width maximum?
That's what it says.
Well, how do you get two cars through a 12-foot opening?
2 doors.
You'd have 2 doors.
Two 12-foot doors.
You can have two
I-
12-foot doors?
Well, or
That's
2
one of the
non-
reasons I
non-foot doors.
suggested that the Bucks County weigh in on that standard.
And I was just going to reiterate that.
You mentioned UGI. Are you planning on heating these homes with gas?
If it's available, we prefer to, yes.
I'm not sure it is in this area.
No, there's nothing on north side of 309 or the west side of 309. for
Yeah, I was gonna
UGI.
say it's down Lawn Avenue down by the hospital, but I don't know that it's up here at all.
No, not under. Yeah, there'd be another line under 309.
Yeah, we really haven't gotten that far into it yet to really start that process. You know, when available, we certainly love to bring gas into our projects. Homeowners seem to love it for heating and cooking and hot water. So the caveat would be, you know, where available.
All right.
So obviously we got some work to do. We're early in the stages here. We just wanted to get something in and start the dialogue and get some feedback and get moving in the right direction before we go spending a whole lot of money engineering plans that are going to have to be changed. So appreciate your time.
I'll give you. This is John. I'll give you one other comment with regard to open space. I'm looking at our ordinance article 17, page 217, item 6. In terms of open space configuration, it says narrow or irregular pieces of land which serve no public open space function or which are remnants left over after the lots, streets, and parking areas have been laid out should not be considered to meet the ordinance requirements for open space and shall not be counted in the calculation of minimum open space requirements. Looking at this plan, and also this goes to the next one we're going to be talking about, I caution you, I think you're getting close to that definition of leftover irregular shaped pieces of land.
Understood. We'll take a look at that closer. It's a uniquely shaped lot where it's very narrow coming from north to south through there, and there's very little flexibility. I mean, it's basically run a road up to connect the two spots. Is really your. It's not a lot of creativity out there for the lots, I guess is where I'm going with that for that portion of the way this parcel is configured. So, but we'll certainly
I give you credit for creativity. Somebody must have worked in a sardine factory because you've packed them in here about as tightly as you possibly could to get as most use of the land as you could possibly get.
All right. Do we have anything else on the Lawn Avenue project? All right. Why don't we keep moving then? And move on to the Ridge Road project. So it's you guys again, right?
Yep.
Need a
Stuck
breather?
with us twice in a row.
All right.
All right. This is a just under 5-acre tract of land. It's in the VC Village Center zoning district at the intersection of Ridge and Lawn and 309 borders the other side of it, surrounded on 3 sides by a roadway. We're proposing to put in 28 townhouse, 6 buildings with a 26-foot wide cartway, 46-foot wide right-of-way, be a private roadway in this case. We do have 14 off-street parking spaces located in the center of that access drive or private roadway for additional parking. The townhouses will have a 1-car garage with one space in the driveway. Setback here is 20 feet as well. Providing sidewalk on both sides. would be served by public water and sewer. We obviously would have 2 access points, one off of Lawn and one off of Ridge. The one off of Lawn would be right in, right out. We would hope the one off of Ridge could be a full service intersection, full movement intersection. Again, obviously we have to go through, do the stormwater design, saldo, traffic engineering, traffic studies, et cetera, to determine what's needed. PennDOT's going to play a role here. Both roads are state roads at this location. So open space, again, it's a B4 townhouse use, 25% open space is required. I understand that we need to subtract out the lot areas as if we were lotting it out. In this case, it's going to be kind of a condominium ownership situation where you're going to own the building and the land under it, but not any land around it. They're not going to be lotted out where somebody's going to own an individual lot. But we would lot it out to show you that the lots can fit, and then that area required for that lotting is not counted for the open space. Obviously, we take out the stormwater management features and whatnot for the open space. We do have a trail system running throughout the development. We would obviously connect that into any other connections that the comprehensive plan that we talked about. Just on the other side of Ridge is that Wawa piece. So there's basically one tract between the one we just talked about and this parcel. And that's that Wawa piece on the corner that everybody's familiar with. I think that's all I have for an overview. Maybe I'll turn it over to you guys, to Steve, or anybody has any questions or specific comments before we go through the letter.
There are several residences on Ridge Road that looks like they're in front of this development. Are there any changes with any of those properties?
No, I don't believe so.
I'm not sure what you mean, John, by in front of. Do you mean on the opposite side of Ridge?
No, on the east side of Ridge, there's a restaurant and there's several houses.
Oh, okay, over there.
That front Ridge Road. So it looks like this is the driveway goes somewhere between two of those houses back to the open field.
No, you're on the wrong side of the street. You're thinking of the St. property that was just mowed, was just
Yes.
brush hogged. Yeah, that's on the opposite side of Lawn Avenue. This is the triangle piece between the Ridge Road, Lawn Avenue, and the southbound ramp.
By the chiropractor.
Yeah, it goes from Lawn
Oh,
Avenue to the
okay.
chiropractor.
All right, thank you. I was in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it's directly across the street from where Wawa was, the original Wawa was proposed.
Okay.
Okay, when you started talking about houses along the front, I thought you might be in the wrong spot.
I was in the wrong spot. Thank you.
All right. Now, Brian, I believe you own that other property, but we're not here to talk about that other property tonight, right?
That's correct.
All right, if there's no other overlying comments, we'll just jump into the letter here and kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
try to zip through it. Item 1 talks about that we're going with 0 lot line units, condominium type, like I mentioned. 1,800 square foot lots are required, so we will provide a plan showing those lots, showing you how that works. Just for dimensional purposes, there will be no lot lines recorded on the plan, but we can provide all that to show that all those sections of the ordinance are met. Number 2, the B4 use is a permitted use within the zoning district, so I don't have much else to add there.
Well, I guess the question is, have you considered any other options to just straight up residential development?
not, I mean, are we aware that that's a potential use for the property? We are, but it's not what we're proposing at this time.
Okay.
Item number 3, yeah, we'll have to go ahead and create that open space plan that we talked about. Subtracting out all those lot areas and the stormwater management areas and whatnot to make sure that we do meet those requirements with those areas subtracted out. I believe we do. We did do those calculations already. Number 4, again, the trail. We would obviously connect the trail if we're going to be connecting it down to the Wawa piece and you want to see a connection here. I guess the question would be, do you want trail or sidewalk? If we're doing sidewalk, I would assume you would want sidewalk out on Lawn Avenue as well. And I don't know. I guess while we're in this comment, maybe we can just talk about sidewalk on Lawn as well. I mean, on Ridge as well. What your thoughts are?
Yeah, I think, Tim, you brought up before, this is the village area, and
Yeah, it's a village area, so I think there should be sidewalk.
there's
Sidewalk
other
on-
there's other properties than this that are in the village, so theoretically you could, extend onto those properties.
So Lawn and Ridge, you'd like to see sidewalk. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
B would be HOA. Again, the road would be a private roadway owned by the HOA. We do have the towns here that we were talking about before with the benefits of the HOA. Trail will be owned by the HOA, open space, stormwater, etc. We would provide those documents to the township. C, we would add a connection of our trail to the middle of the block there. Maybe bring it down to that lawn, that bullnose between the parking lot, to help provide that block length extension to 800. In this case, the total is only 550, so we would still be under the 800 either way you interpret that. So, cartway width, again, we were going to go with the 26 feet wide with parking on one side. We do have additional, I won't call it off-street, I guess it's on-street perpendicular parking on here. They'll be owned by the HOA, provide sidewalk on both sides.
Just curious, on the sketch, you show the sidewalk stopping at the parking. Is there any reason that in internal perpendicular parking, is there any reason it doesn't wrap around behind that?
No, just it can and it will if we would certainly provide some sort of a connection between the two. If there's a trail coming in, we would tie it to the trail, or yes, it certainly can wrap around behind it as well.
All righty.
Parking, in this case, again, we have the garage and the driveway, and then we have 14 of the perpendicular spaces along with, one side of the street for parking. So I believe it's 1 per unit for townhouses and then 1.5 spillover parking spaces. I guess my question for you, Steve, is does the 1-car garage count as a parking space if it's only 1 car?
I have to read that section again.
Okay.
I don't want to misstate it right now off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I already made a note to do that, but if you had the answer on the top of your head, we would confirm that. That's what our hope is, if that's the one.
I tend to think it's restricted, but you could read it and email me if you need to clarify.
Yep. Okay. F and G, again, talks about the architectural's requirements, no more than 25% and 12-foot garage and et cetera, et cetera. We'll come up with architecturals to make sure we comply with those requirements. G.
Brian, if I can interrupt you there, if we can go back, the recessed 10-foot on the facade. I understand that criteria for single-family homes, but it doesn't seem practical for townhouse product. So looking for feedback, I guess, from the township on that that language.
I don't know that we have a lot of leeway. You know, it's in the zoning ordinance. It says that it doesn't distinguish between dwelling unit types. Again, I think that's a good reason to submit this and the other plan to Bucks County Planning Commission and get their feedback too.
Yeah, even the 25.
But even if we agreed that it's not ideal on a townhouse, I don't know that the Plan Commission has the ability to waive it. Is I guess what I was getting to.
Yeah, I guess I'm just pointing out something that I think is probably an issue in how that was worded and the intention. And certainly we'll get feedback from Bucks County Planning Commission and understand it's not something that the planning has the power to override, being it's a zoning code issue. I guess it would be something that would have to be discussed. But yeah, I guess just pointing out something that I don't think was designed to be applicable to townhouses.
Yeah, even the width of 25%, you know, if you're putting a 12-foot door in there, you would need a 50-foot, 48-foot wide unit in order to do that.
It's not 25% of the width, it's 25% of the area of the facade. It's the total, it's the area of the elevation of the facade.
Oh, okay. All right. I got you. So if it's
It is not written very clear.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I got you there. I see the area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So H, obviously we go to the Bucks County Planning Commission for their comments. We just talked about that.
Right.
On the number 5, resource protection. Again, we don't really have any environmental resources here. There's no woodlands, no wetlands, no waterways, no floodplains, etc. So we'll obviously keep that updated as we move forward. Number 6, there are some monitoring wells. Our survey has got those located, or will get them located if they're not, and get those shown on the plan where they're at. And then obviously if we have a phase 1, we'll provide it. If not, we'll get one, as well as we discussed for the last project.
Brian, do you know if they're still?
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna say, do you know if they're still actively testing those?
I don't. Yeah, it's something I'd have to dig a little further into. Do you know the history behind that?
Yeah, I think that was from the gas station on
That's
the
what
other
I
side
was
of the
thinking
ramps.
too.
Yeah, there was issues with that years ago.
Oh,
There was
okay.
also issues with TCE down in the old precision finishing site, but I don't think that reached all the way up to this property. I think this was more the gas station.
So it'd be a DEP thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a DEP thing, whether it was MTBE or something else. I don't remember now. It was quite a while ago that was actively being pursued.
I know they had 2 that they were still testing in front of the outpatient center when that was being constructed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a few years back now. So.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't know if they're still.
You have to dig a little further into that.
All right, stormwater management facilities. Yeah, obviously we got to go through and meet all those requirements for PennDOT and PDS and the township. We're also going to have to deal with PennDOT's review because we're going to be discharging into a PennDOT right away. So we'll do our infiltration testing and complete the stormwater design accordingly. Next is public water and sewer. Again, here we're proposing to actually take the sewer from the Lawn Avenue, so all the way down Mountain View through our Lawn Avenue development, and bring it out down Long Avenue to this site. That's the way the water and sewer are being proposed to tie to this project.
Right, but this is a bigger administrative problem on this property as opposed to your other property, because this is in the Telford Borough service area.
Understood.
So you're talking about bringing PRA utilities into this area. And
Understood.
the township is involved in those service areas, so I'm just saying, it goes beyond just an agreement between Telford and PRA of who could get the service there. The Act 537 plans and things have to be modified for the township to allow that Percy to serve that. And I know it's been talked about, here and there, at least preliminarily, but just pointing out that there's
an extra
more
step there.
administratively that has to happen for that to work.
Yep, I understand there was the extra step. I didn't consider the fact that the township's involved in that step, but thank you for bringing that up. Number 10, again, we're gonna have to do traffic study. We have two access points. We're gonna have to do scoping with PennDOT. We'll keep the township involved in that scoping process. And I'm assuming you guys are gonna want to see sidewalk. And we'll see what the traffic study says as far as widening and additional right of way.
Now, I guess we've already talked about coordinating these two projects. I presume, unless McMahon or somebody comes up with a reason why not to, one traffic study could be done for both projects. It just seems to make sense. They're right next to each other and they're interconnected.
Good suggestion.
Steve, the other thing, I know there was some discussion about putting a roundabout in at the Lawn and Ridge intersection. Would that change anything in the traffic studies?
I guess it would be a point that should be touched upon in the traffic studies. I think we still, when that point first came up, the question was, we only probably have right of way available on 3 of the corners and not the 4th. And I think that's still the potential roadblock to a roundabout.
Okay.
But I know now PennDOT looks at roundabout as, a first option. So I'm sure PennDOT is going to want some consideration of that if improvements are necessary.
Okay, number 11, again, it's talking about the modification to the signal permit. That'll be all tied to that. Street improvements, I guess I'll ask the question if there is any widening that you guys feel you need at this point. Obviously, with the traffic study, that'll give us our recommendations from our end. But if you're feeling you're going to want to see widening for sure out there, or we're going to just defer to PennDOT and what they're going to recommend.
Yeah. I almost think we're deferring to PennDOT in this particular case. Lawn is already beyond our standards because of the turn lanes. And depending on what happens at your entrance at Ridge, I think we certainly needed to see the traffic study. I don't know if the township has any overwhelming standards for Ridge Road other than what PennDOT can ask for.
Okay.
On Lawn Avenue, what's the distance between the end of the southbound exit ramp from 309 into Lawn Avenue to the entrance to the driveway into your development? They look fairly close.
Yeah, hold on one second if I can.
Looks like it's just a couple inches, John.
That's what I'm afraid of. You've got a possible scissoring effect with traffic coming off of 309 wanting to move to the left and traffic coming south on Lawn Avenue wanting to make a right-hand turn into this development.
I'm gonna guess it's about 200 feet, just looking at the plan. I don't have the exact dimensions here.
Okay, somewhere between 2 inches and 200 feet. That's fine.
The other
And-
thing, though, is there is that concrete divide there on Lawn where you're coming down to the turning lane for Ridge, and it looks like that entrance where you'd be, I guess, turning left, coming out would be really close to where that concrete exists, I think.
Well, that entrance would only be a right in and right out, so you wouldn't be
Oh,
able to
okay.
make a left out of there. You would only be able to go right on Lawn, away from 309, and only come in if you're coming from 309.
I for the purpose of the sketch plan, I didn't delve into that question of, you know, how that entrance would function, but I know with the traffic studies, our traffic consultant and especially PennDOT is going to look closely at that entrance and how it will function and if it'll function safely. So, you know, I think that's a question mark to be answered once that information and those reviews are done.
Yeah, I think at this stage, we're just acknowledging it's probably going to be right in, right out at the most. We'll get those details and the exact locations worked out with the traffic study and PennDOT.
If you were coming off Lawn and making a right on Ridge, would it be easier to avoid that traffic light, which I think is no right on red, right, and just cut through this development? Any thoughts to traffic calming or anything like that? You know, if you were traveling from Lawn to Ridge and cutting through there.
We certainly could put a speed table or something in the center of this if that's something that the township sees as a potential. Again, we can look at the traffic study too and get their input on how many people are making that movement, you know, right on Ridge from Lawn there.
Right.
If they feel it's a cut through, then they can provide us that information too, and we can address it. It's a valid question.
That's not
Yeah, that's a good point, because for all the people that ignore that no turn on red sign now,
Right.
they'll go right through this development.
Yeah, people constantly do that. Yep.
All right, next, number 13 is the trails. We talked about connecting all that with sidewalk and everything already. 14 is owner notifications. We'll acknowledge we'll do that. 15 is the narrative, agreed. 16 is the rec land. This one, I would assume you'd like to see the fee in lieu of on this one, but I'll give you a chance to give me your thoughts.
I would probably say that's a correct assumption.
All right, 17 is landscape plans. Again, I'll ask, is there any specific areas we need to look at buffering? There's, you know, with the townhouse development, I think it's mostly single family around here besides the Wawa lot across. I think those are single families across Ridge, and it's certainly across Lawn there are.
I mean, I'll go back to my original comment about this being, you know, more suitable for commercial. I think you need to buffer your new units from the existing traffic more so than you're buffering it from the chiropractor next door.
Understood. All right. We'll certainly take that into account. 18 is ES and PDS, which we touched on. 19 is your subdivision ordinances. So
back to 18 real quick, or 17 real quick, the landscaping. Steve, would we want to see shading over those parking areas, the off-street parking or the on-street parking, perpendicular ones?
Yeah, I guess our ordinance probably isn't clear on that. Is it considered on-street parking? In that case, there's street trees, and the street trees would probably be, you know, doing double duty as the parking area shading. I think we'd want to see landscaping along those, exactly what we're calling it, whether it's just street trees or if it's parking area shading. I think we get to the same ends.
Gotcha.
How about any street trees along ridge or lawn? Is that something you'd want to see, or is that not, I guess, required? Or
Well, it's required, but you know, I guess it depends on what you do. If you're gonna put plantings in to sort of buffer the new houses from the streets, it's, you know, I don't know that you need buffer plantings plus street trees.
okay,
The ordinance requires street trees along all frontages. That's
right.
say
I
that.
guess the fee in lieu of waiver with the fee in lieu of is what I was thinking. I
But
should say
if you-
required.
if you were putting some
Recommended.
alternate plantings in, you know, you may not have to put standard street trees if you're doing some other kind of alternate buffering.
Okay.
Although it could be more of a standardized look throughout the village if we had street trees.
True.
All right. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. Brian, do you have anything you want to add at this time?
No, I just want to thank the planning commission for their time this evening, and for Greg getting us on the agenda, and for Steve getting out the reviews as quickly as he did based on our initial submission. So yeah, I appreciate all the good feedback on both projects.
Oh, you know what I think we touched on, but I just want to make it clear. So we had already touched on doing sidewalk on Lawn Avenue, but keep in mind that sort of doubles up as that trail that we talked about on the other development. It continues down Lawn Avenue, past the ramps, down past the outpatient center. So sidewalk / trail along Lawn Avenue would do double duty as sidewalk in the village and potentially that trail connection that's shown on the comp plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good.
Brian, what happened with the exhibits that you wanted to bring out tonight?
It's fine. I think we covered them. It
Okay.
just showed a lot of the open space, how we did the calculations and stuff. But,
Okay.
I think we addressed most of it verbally. I think we're okay. So.
Good enough. Thank you. All right. Well, I guess that's it for you guys for now. I'll wait to hear back from you.
It is. Again, thanks very much, and I wish everybody Merry Christmas, great holidays.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night. All right. Old business. Do we need to get into the comprehensive plan initiatives tonight?
Please say no.
Yeah, if we could take a pass on that for tonight, I think,
I can't hear you, John.
I said, I think if we take a pass on that for tonight, nobody will
Okay.
lose any sleep.
Good.
John, did you ever hear anything back from Park and Rec? Because I think you had reached out to them on some of that stuff.
You're right. I did, and I haven't followed up with them. I will do that.
I thought you were retired and had all this time.
That is true. That is true.
All right. Well, let's move on to new business. So the codification is coming up. They want us to recommend adoption for the supervisors. I don't know if we need to have in-depth discussion on this. I read the Bucks County review on it. I talked to Greg about this. He said, any revisions, any suggested revisions from Bucks County, any things that we might come up with in the future can be easily changed. But they want to get this approval from us tonight so that they can get this approved with the supervisors.
And
Greg has joined.
if I could just give you a couple words to make you feel better about all that. There wasn't, this was an effort to codify what we have, essentially put all the ordinances into one book, make sure all the adoptions, all the amendments and things all jive together. It was not a rewrite of the subdivision ordinance or the zoning ordinance or any of our other ordinances. Yes, we corrected some errors. If you remember a couple years ago, we put together a list of some minor things in the subdivision ordinance that should be cleaned up. We were able to slip those things in so they got addressed. But it in no way is a rewrite of our ordinances. It's just making sure that all of the amendments that happened over the last 100 years all got incorporated in the right place. And now there's one large document that's searchable and scannable online that you could find all the information.
This doesn't include any of the things that came out of the comprehensive plan rewrite.
Not specifically the comprehensive plan rewrite, no. No, like I said, there was no effort to make modifications to zoning ordinances and things other than correct errors and make sure everything jives correctly.
But being codified will make inserting new items into the ordinance and wherever a lot
Yep.
simpler, correct?
Yep, because then every year or two, depending on what the program is that the township signs on to, we send them any modifications that were made during the year. They incorporate it into the book, spit out the new online version, and everything is all in one place again.
Yeah, this is John. The struggle I have is with what you said, is that there are changes. It's not a word for word translation from one media to another. And I talked to Greg about this as well. I ran into him at the zoning meeting this week, and his reaction was the same as yours. I thought you were retired and you had all this spare time now. What are you up to? But I understand that, as you said, this, in a way, I'm blindly approving something I don't feel like I've had adequate time to thoroughly review. But I understand that there is a mechanism that is always available to make changes and corrections after the fact.
Yeah, and some of you may remember, we did this with the zoning ordinance. We adopted the zoning ordinance, and when we were doing the final reviews, we found a whole bunch of little errata and minor things, and we came back within a couple months and adopted the zoning ordinance. The problem is if you try to make the changes now, you just bog down the process, and it has to be re-advertised, and we never get to the end point. So I think what the board is looking for is let's get to the end zone, get this adopted. Then if we need to make some minor changes to fix things, we could follow up with that.
I also think it'll make it much easier to make changes in the future because it's going to be clear where those are going to be inserted, where they belong, all that kind of stuff.
I agree.
Any other discussion? So I would look for a motion to recommend adoption of the codification. Does that sound right? Craig?
This is Alex. I'll make that recommendation.
Can I get a
For
second?
that motion, sorry.
This is Andy. I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. All right. So that is all we have on the agenda this evening. Steve, was there anything on your, on the pending?
No, there's nothing on the pending other than we have things already for next month. So we have a lot line change up on Tower Road. We have a lot consolidation out on Old Bethel Pike, and everyone's favorite Butter Creek Builders submitted a new sketch plan. No cul-de-sac street. So yeah, just the 5 lots that in one way or another have frontage somewhere. So I've just got it, so I haven't really looked at it. But so we have a couple little projects lined up for next month. And the only other thing I want to tell you, just anyone that was on the planning or on the board meeting last month, you might have heard this, but the supervisors did authorize McMahon, our traffic consultant, to do some overview studies of this Lawn Avenue corridor and down on the State Road corridor to establish, what the township feels are the ultimate improvements in these areas. So as these developers that we have in here now, we could figure out what needs to be done in an appropriate, long range plan for those traffic improvements. So we're a little behind on the State Road one because we have more applications in, but I think we'll be ahead of the game up here at Lawn Avenue and be able to use that as a tool as when these plans come in their formal submissions.
Okay.
I guess I'm missing what's the upside of that?
It's being proactive and not just taking the piecemeal traffic studies we're getting from the developers. We're looking at it at a little more holistic look at the ultimate build out.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if Select Properties is proposing 80 new homes or 100 new homes in the area, but there's space available for another 300, then the traffic study takes account of the full.
Yeah, we want to look at what the ultimate
Okay, that's a good
end game
approach.
will be. And then if we could get these developers to do their part toward getting to that end goal.
Well, especially at State Road, because it seems like all the developers are coming back and nobody needs a light, yet we need a light, or two lights, So
Yeah, well, that's what we hope to answer those questions.
right, okay.
So that's in the works. I just wanted you to, since we had, applications in both areas today, I just want to let you know that was being worked on.
I'm wondering if Select Properties gets sewer and water over there at Lawn Avenue, whether you're going to see Wawa come back there.
That's a distinct possibility.
Wow.
That was the holdup back in the day. Don't know. They do things differently now, like we've learned with the other Wawas. They use development companies now. They don't do it themselves. So I'm not sure what the mechanism would be to get them interested in that again, but it could be.
Well, try not to trigger it. Okay.
But I think along the same lines of what you just discussed from PennDOT is having the water and sewer people plan for the ultimate build out rather than a piecemeal approach will save a lot of time, effort, and aggravation down the road as well.
Yes.
If one of these places is going to dig under 309, that whatever facilities they install shouldn't be just big enough for 100 homes. It should be sized for what the maximum capacity is going to be. That's assuming PennDOT's going to let somebody dig underneath their brand new rebuilt road.
Well, chances are they'll be allowed to bore under it. That's what they'd be proposing.
I'm also guessing, John, that the authorities and the powers to be in those utilities are going to want to see things sized for ultimate capacity, not just a single project.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Steve?
No.
Okay. So do we have any public comment? All right. So Teresa, you have the floor. Please state your name and address, and you have 2.5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Teresa Link, 119 West Branch Road. I kind of waited all this time to have the floor, and I just want to say thank you to Mr. Ruth for bringing up the need for lights that are going to be on State Road. Right now, as a resident, as I go out onto up Quarry Road, out to State Road to make a left-hand turn towards 309, it is near impossible at 5 o'clock rush hour, let alone having 213 new employees coming out of the warehouse in line to make a left and or a right, and then truck traffic on top of it. I just feel that it's very unsafe to not have lights there. And I hopefully with the PennDOT study that they'll show that we need lights at Meeting House and Quarry Road, especially for the safety of my children that will be driving by the time this is done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie Willard.
Once again, gentlemen, it's Jack Willard on my wife's computer. I've got to get a camera and microphone. I live at 2900 Clymer Avenue in Telford, Pennsylvania. We're parallel to State Road, right between Meeting House and Quarry. I have a few notes here from the Triple Net project. And I know I'm not getting my questions answered, but they need to be asked. Does the runoff from the parking lot go to the underground basin? Because I'm in the construction industry, and I'm looking at how much impervious surface. I mean, if you take into account that the lawn that they have will be compacted, it's pretty much 100% impervious. The second one was, and my hat's off to you gentlemen for picking up on this. The trees they had listed, there were 2 conifers and roughly 20 deciduous trees. The buffering to the Lutheran community would be minimal unless they used all of the conifers on the as in the buffering zone. And the third is, when was the traffic study performed? Because it was done during the COVID shutdown. I question the validity. And as I've said before, you're probably sick of hearing it, but this township doesn't need 24/7 businesses. The traffic that we have getting out from Meeting House or Quarry Road, and the way that it's set up, it's horrific. Try to get out at 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you're waiting quite some time. And traffic at Meeting House, traffic backs up from the 309 ramps past Meeting House. So just voicing my concerns, and I thank you very much for your time. Merry Christmas to everyone in the meeting.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jack.
Same to you, Jack.
I think about it, just because it's a school night. And I don't want you up in the bedroom.
Teresa, you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me
Would you write
turn
it's
that
past my
off
bedtime
because
too?
I'm negotiating with my daughter right now. Sorry.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, seeing none, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
It's John, I'll make the motion.
This is Tim. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you.
Christmas.
Same
Thank
here.
you. Have a good holiday.
Have a good
Happy
night.
New Year.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Good night.
Let me get out of here.